Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Green Flag. I'm your host, Lukas Wacker, and with me, as always, we have Kyle Cushman. And welcome to the first season preview for 2021. We've got the Truck Series to preview, and we also have basically our first real race recap to an extent for this year. We've got the Rolex 24 that happened over this past weekend, a thrilling race. I got to say, 24 hours, it went by quite slowly, but the action just kind of kept you into it throughout. So we'll discuss who won and how close we were on our predictions when we previewed it last week. We feel pretty good about what we did overall.
I feel like it's a good start. I feel like it's a good start to the year because we've had some rough ones. I'm not going to lie. We've gone over on every single championship pick in NASCAR so far, but pretty damn good for our first Rolex 24 picks, I gotta say.
For something that we're not too familiar with, to an extent, in terms of
it's not the main thing we watch.
Exactly. I think we did a pretty good job. We'll look at that a little bit later on. Yeah. We have a little bit of news and notes to get to before we get into that. The trucks will be at the end of the episode, so make sure you stay tuned for that. But before we get into all of that, how you doing today, Kyle, after our first big event of the racing calendar has completed?
Yes, that was a lot of fun. And I caught bits and pieces in the first couple of hours there. I was busy doing some broadcast stuff for the NWHL over the weekend. So I didn't catch the beginning of the race, and I kind of had to watch the end of the race out of like the corner of my eye and try to pretend like I was watching the game I'm supposed to be covering. But I got to say, from everything I saw and everything online, it was a phenomenal race. It was so good. And what a way to really kick off the year. And obviously we had the Chili Bowl. It was great, but for the races that are kind of more of our bread and butter,
mainstream,
exactly, starting with the Rolex 24, it kind of feels like it's the race that really kicks off the year, because it's also at Daytona as well, and NASCAR starts at Daytona, obviously. Kind of marks that we're really getting close to the start of the motorsports calendar. So that was so much fun. That was such a great race. And I can't wait to dive into it. I'm doing good. It's been busy, I'm not going to lie, but you know what? I can't wait for it to get even busier with motorsports now right around the corner.
Yeah, 12 days, 11 days when you're watching this till the Daytona 500. And, I mean, that's just a week until the Clash now. We're going to be...
Less so now. The clock's ticking.
It is very much so. Before we get into the news and notes, just maybe a little bit on a little bit more of a down note, I guess you could say. We've got an upbeat one first off here. We got Ken Squire. He's recovered from COVID-19. He's beaten it. We're wishing him all the best in his road to recovery. We got an update from his daughter over the past couple of days, and he seems to be doing well, in good spirits, and all the prayers and everything. They are doing well, and they have done their job. So we're wishing Ken Squire all the best, obviously a broadcasting legend when it comes to NASCAR. So we're wishing him the best. But then on maybe a little bit more of a down note, of course, Mark Beard Sr., the president of Beard Motorsports, tragically passed away. I believe it was this morning or yesterday when you're watching this. Very sad to hear that. Noah Gragson running that car in the Daytona 500, hopefully making that the Daytona 500 in the 62 car. Mark Beard, obviously the big guy, Beard Motorsports, hence the last name and the name of the company. He's passed away, so we're giving our thoughts and prayers and the best to their family as they take the time to grieve this incredible loss. And then rest in peace, Captain Sir Tom. Very well known over there in Great Britain, and he was a legend this past year with his story. And we're wishing his family all the best as they grieve his loss. So they will all be missed. And then Ken Squire, wishing you all the best on your road to recovery. Now we can get into the news and notes as we look onto the more brighter side of things here, and maybe a little bit more of a down note, I'd say, for myself here to lead off today's episode. We did our preseason silly season predictions for 2022, and I took a big swing. All right, I went for the home run right out of the gate here. There were, it made sense to an extent, but it seemed unlikely, and they didn't even let me have a week to kind of revel in that prediction, as Denny Hamlin has agreed to a multi-year extension with Joe Gibbs Racing. I predicted him to go to his new team in 2311 Racing as the second car. That is no longer going to be the case. That's unfortunate from my end, but FedEx has also signed a multi-year agreement as well. So the two of them, they're going to be there most likely with Joe Gibbs Racing for the remainder of their careers, it seems. They seem very happy together. It's a great partnership. FedEx has been with Denny since his rookie season in 2006 for the team, and it seems like Denny Hamlin's going to continue his Cup Series career to the end with Joe Gibbs Racing. He seems pretty happy over there, and FedEx has got a great driver to partner with. So your thoughts on the extension, Kyle? It's pretty self-explanatory on why he would stay, but obviously I took a little bit of a guess on it. But for the people that didn't predict this, like yourself, it seems like a decent move for Hamlin to stay here long-term.
Well, I'm already up 1-0, so that's a tough one. That's a tough bounce for you. I did do better in the silly season predictions last year as well. You kicked my butt in fantasy, so it's looking like really that trend might be continuing here. But we'll see. We'll see. But no, outside of you, this was a move that just made sense. Like, yep.
Okay,
I understand the swing. I understand the swing, but for Denny Hamlin, you've been with the team your entire career. You're starting to get into ownership. So you might as well just re-sign with the team you're at. You know it's going to be a competitive team year in, year out. It strengthens that relationship as well with that new team that you're co-owning as well. So this was one that I felt pretty confident in. And of course, there was always the potential for the big shakeup. But I think this was the first one to really come in terms of silly season. If this wasn't something that happened like right away in preseason, then I think those rumors would start to come. But I think both sides wanted to get it out of the way quickly. Denny Hamlin wants to stay with that team for at least a few more years, obviously. JGR wants him in that stable for a few more years, even though he doesn't have that championship yet. Especially last season, he kind of took over as the main guy at that team. We'll see if that continues into the future here, because there's some pretty damn good drivers on that team. But yeah, this was a move that, in my opinion, made a lot of sense for both sides. We don't know the terms of the contract. I'm sure that it was a pretty pricey one for both JGR and for FedEx as well. But this is one of those ones that we expected to come and has come very early, I got to say. It's a good thing we did our predictions way early, because
it's terrific.
I got to say, I thought we were doing them like pretty early in the game, and we'd have to wait a while to see what would come.
At least March, I thought.
Nope, apparently not.
No, they didn't even let the season start to make you look like a fool.
The first one last year was Blaney, and that happened in February, right? So because he re-signed like right before COVID hit. So
yeah, it was something like that. I don't know.
We've got like a good like 3-4
They're really
weeks.
Jumping the gun here. All right,
we're getting ahead of things here.
This is a joke, Denny Hamlin. You couldn't let me have at least a couple of weeks, but
not even one full week.
Damn, man, it's not off to a great start with these.
One episode where that prediction could have come true.
Exactly. Oh, what a heartbreaker. But on the bright side, at least it's only one kind of move that's been impacted in terms of Harrison Burton coming up. That's not going to happen. At least that's for Denny Hamlin for that prediction. It remains to be seen on what happens with Martin Truex Jr.'s contract situation, since he is still in a contract season. But for Denny Hamlin, he's returning to Joe Gibbs Racing, and it seems like they are together for the beyond, and it's a good partnership. I just took a swing on it. Just seemed like, why not?
Hey, you know what? I love the swing. But yeah, this is a move that made a lot of sense. When you look at his entire career, where it's going into the future here, it would have been very, very bold to 1 year into co-owning a team, going over and driving for them. Like that would have been an amazing storyline. I would have loved that to happen for just the storyline of it, but realistically, it was always a bit far-fetched, and I'm excited to see that relationship continue here into the future, because that means that if they do want to open up more cars, that means more potential seats for other drivers rather than Hamlin going over there himself. So I still think, as you do too, I think eventually he'll end up driving for that team at some point. But right now, while he's still in his prime, I think he wants to play it safe potentially and stick with the big team. And that's obviously what he's doing here in this contract extension. We don't know how long it is. Could be 2 years. It could be 5 years. We don't know. NASCAR doesn't release that stuff, which is extremely annoying. But regardless, that 11 and Denny Hamlin are staying with JGR for at least a couple more years.
Yeah, and this gives him probably the best shot to win a championship, in all honesty. If he's going to win one, it's most likely going to be at JGR, not at 2311 Racing, at least for the next couple of seasons, that is. Just based off of realistic expectations. But congratulations to Hamlin and FedEx for getting that contract sorted before the season starts, and they don't even have to worry about that for many, many years to come. So we move on to the next bit of news here quickly. Pitbull will be the Grand Marshal for the Daytona 500, saying the most famous words of motorsports. He gets that honor for this year's Daytona 500. Obviously, the co-owner of Trackhouse now, so he's very much integrated into the sport, and it's great to see. I would love to see Michael Jordan and Pitbull do it at the same time. What a story that would have been. That would have been.
Come on, we couldn't have got MJ.
Something out. There's still a little bit of a week left. Come on, we can work something out there. I think it'd be pretty cool. But Pitbull, I guess, we'll get the secondary option that we probably would have preferred for the Grand Marshal. But nonetheless, at least we have somebody well-known taking that role for this Daytona 500. And then on the sponsorship side of things with Kyle Larson, we talked about this in this past episode. And he's finally got some outside Hendrick Corporation sponsorship, and that includes Cincinnati Incorporated and Freightliner. So Freightliner was with JGR previously. I think it was back 2014-ish, something like that. It was a while since they've been on a car. They were with Matt Kenseth back then. But they're going to be sponsoring Kyle Larson for 2 races each for the 2021 season. So it's great to see him getting some outside Hendrick Corporation sponsorship, because Lord knows that he needs it. He's got HendrickCars.com. And then the one that we talked about last week with the Nation's Guard. So it's great to see that he's at least getting some sponsorship, and sponsors are willing to take that risk with Kyle Larson. So, and then the next little bit of sponsorship news as well, CommScope, formerly Aris, well known. The sponsor that Daniel Suarez and Carl Edwards, kind of made famous in the NASCAR Xfinity Series and Cup Series. That's going to be a primary sponsor for Daniel Suarez for the large portion of 2021. That is CommScope. So rebranded, but it looks like a spectacular car. They've nailed another paint scheme here.
They're crushing these schemes.
Yeah, I mean, Trackhouse is this much further ahead than 2311 Racing right now. I got to be honest.
How many do we just have? That's the one now from 2311 so far?
I believe so. Just the DoorDash, but it remains to be seen.
We got more to come. We got more to come.
I'm just saying it's gonna.
But that CommScope one looks. It looks nice.
I think that people like the Gradient, the PPG paints car. I think this is better than that. And
I think so too.
Saying something. I think it's just such a great look, greatly rebranded. It's gonna pop under the lights or in the daytime. It's just going to be a great looking car. So props to Trackhouse and Daniel Suarez on getting all these great sponsors, still reliable with them, and they're sticking with them here after all of these years. So it's great to see that. So what do you make of the new sponsors that we have with Kyle Larson, and then the returning one here that's been with 7 years with Daniel Suarez?
Yeah, the Larson one surprised me a little bit, because I thought we were going to have to wait a little bit longer until we got some non-Hendrick sponsors for him. But when you look at least with Cincinnati there, that's a sponsor that comes over from Bowman previously. Yes. He won at Auto Club, I think it was, with Cincinnati. Yep. So
the Bowman effect.
The Bowman effect. Yeah. Hey, you know what? At least not the sponsors. At least not for the sponsors, only for the tracks. But no, I think that was maybe one that you could have looked to as potentially jumping on board with Kyle Larson at some point here. So it's good to see that both them and Freightliner, who I don't know as much about, obviously previously with JGR a few years back, but it's going to start small, and I think this is what we kind of anticipate here. They're gonna be on the car all year, but the main thing is those 1 primaries that they're going to have each. So
2 primaries each.
2 primaries each. Excuse me. So no, that's good to see, because it's going to be a slow process here for Kyle Larson. It's not going to be somebody comes right away and sponsors an entire season for him and it's all fine and dandy. It's going to be a process here, and that starts with these 2 and the kind of self-sponsored one. So if he performs on track, the sponsors will eventually come, but it's nice to see that at least a couple here have jumped on board, because once again, this is a situation where he is apologized, but not just apologized for what he's done. He's legitimately shown improvement as a person, and whether you look at the essay he's written or all the steps he's actually made to make himself a better person, educate himself, all these different things. These are steps that we don't normally see from people who are celebrity in the limelight. They do something dumb like what he did. They kind of go under the radar for a couple months and then come back and go, everything's fine. And Kyle Larson didn't do that. He took the step back. He made himself a better person, and he didn't shy away from it either when he's come back. So because of those reasons, I believe he's deserving of a second chance. We've talked about that multiple times, and it's good to see a couple sponsors here also believe so.
I don't know if you saw the season preview that NBC did over the weekend,
no.
but they were really high on Kyle Larson's upcoming season. Like
we'll get to our thoughts on that in a week?
A week. Yeah,
a week's time?
Yeah. So. But I was pretty interested to see what they had to say on it. They had a large majority of them had Kyle Larson making the championship 4. So pretty high expectations from the broadcasting.
Nobody picked him for the ship, though? Okay.
No, nobody picked them for the ship. But, I mean, what a story that would be. One of the greater comeback stories of the past decade for sure. That would be for Kyle Larson if he were to finish that off. But we'll talk about that a little bit more next week. Kyle Busch is a good one. Kyle Busch is a good comeback story when he won.
But that's a
I
tough
said
one
of. Kyle Busch is the best. All right. Okay, there's no debate there.
There you go.
Come on. There's no debate on Kyle Busch's comeback story.
Okay.
But moving on. We go down to the Truck Series with this next little bit of news. Nemco Motorsports is not planning to, so this is Joe Nemechek's team that he runs. John Hunter Nemechek ran that car, or that truck, quite often when they did their part-time stuff. They haven't run full-time for quite some time, but Nemco Motorsports is not planning on entering the Truck Series season opener, and they may not run at all this season. So that's a little bit disappointing there, but it makes sense. John Hunter Nemechek down in the Truck Series once again, but for Kyle Busch Motorsports, so it just makes sense. I don't see Joe Nemechek carrying the load for that team this season, so it's just financially it just makes sense for them as well. You don't have to put a truck out there to run 15th, especially in the Truck Series lineup, which we'll talk about a little bit later on, how stacked that is. Pretty crazy how
it's ridiculous
stacked this Truck Series field is in terms of talent. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on, but a little bit of a sad note there that we're losing Nemco Motorsports, it seems, for not only the season opener, but maybe for the whole season. But if they do run, it will be under the Chevrolet.
Yeah, and it's a little bit predictable when you look at Nemechek coming back to the Truck Series on a full-time basis. It was John Hunter. Sorry, I should specify. That was the one that mainly was coming back down and running those races for them. So the fact that he's got a full schedule and won't be able to run races for them makes sense why they wouldn't. Maybe they go out and get like an Xfinity car or something, or I don't know if they still have one from a couple years ago, something like that. But at least for this season, it looks like Nemco is probably not going to be doing too much.
Nope, that definitely seems to be the case. We'll talk about a little bit more about the NASCAR announcements a little bit later on here, but we'll get to the Formula One stuff quickly over the past couple of days in terms of news. And a really great positive story here. Juan Manuel Correa make his triumphant racing return this upcoming season in Formula 3, so F3 for ART Grand Prix. If you don't know the story, look it up. It is absolutely sensational what this young man has had to do in his road to recovery from the Spa accident back in 2019, where we tragically lost the life of Antoine Hubert. He has just gone through so much. It was a lot of leg injuries for him, and he's had to do a lot of physiotherapy, and the story, just the transformation from where he started back in 2019 in August to now is truly remarkable. So please go look it up. Just follow his story. It's really incredible. And this guy was pretty highly touted in F2 when he was running. And it's glad to see that he's, going back to F3, so a series lower than where he was previously when he crashed. But at least he's on that road to recovery, and maybe we'll see him in F2 in a year or so's time. We're wishing him all the best in his future endeavors with ART Grand Prix and in F3 this season. Hopefully he can go win a championship. That would be quite the story. Yeah. But very happy to see that Correa's back, Kyle.
Yeah, it's an unbelievable story. And this is a team as well that's extremely competitive in F3. When you look at some of the names that have come through there just the past couple of years since it's been rebranded to F3 from GP3, Christian Lundgaard and Theo Pourchaire are the two big ones that you can look at as two real hopefuls to make it to F1 here in the potentially coming years. One of those I have on my grid if you listen to our F1 predictions video last week. And so, this is a fantastic story. And the fact that this quickly from that accident and the injuries he sustained. Like those injuries he sustained, most people would never return to the sport. And the circumstances of the crash and everything as well, the fact that he's not only coming back, but doing so with a top team in a very competitive championship as well in F3 is nothing short of remarkable. I really hope he goes out and wins a race at some point. He's still only 21, so this guy's got a lot of career ahead of him. And hopefully he can make a career for himself here, because what he went through there is something that nobody should have to go through. I can only imagine everything from the rehabilitation to the guilt involved in the crash and everything involved, the fact that he's coming back just a year and a half essentially since that crash is phenomenal.
Yeah, this guy's a fighter. He's got what a great mentality he has. A lot of people will give up after something like that. You just can't get behind the wheel of a race car, and that's totally understandable after everything that happened that day. Yeah. But the fact that he has the determination and the will to get back behind the wheel of a Formula One car or Formula 3 car, Formula car, but nonetheless, it is truly remarkable for a young man at 21 years of age, the same age as basically us here, that he's gone through so much in his young life and that he's battled back through the adversity that's faced him. He stared it right in the face and he's taken it one step at a time. And it's going to be great to see him back behind the wheel of a race car come this upcoming season. So that's a great feel-good story, obviously off to the 2021 year. Only a month and we have something like this. It's really, really positive, really great that we have something like this. And then another thing over this past weekend on Sunday, they had the virtual Grand Prix return for Formula One. Had that during the pandemic. We talked about that, what their schedule looked like. 3 races. The first of 3 took place on Sunday, where Enzo Fittipaldi became victorious and won the first race of the virtual Grand Prix at the Red Bull Ring in Austria. So that's great news for him, beating out his brother as well. So that's going to be a little bit of bragging rights, I'm sure. I watched a little bit of it. Rolex 24 was on at the same time, so I kind of had an eye on both. But it seemed like it was pretty dirty driving throughout the field. They didn't really give too much of a crap, to be honest, in that one. But nonetheless, congratulations to Enzo Fittipaldi on the great win over the weekend. And then as well, when you're watching this, the Mercedes Challenger will already be announced, but they are announcing the Challenger on February 3rd. So the first F1 car to be announced for this upcoming season, the unveiling, it seems like it's going to be a black livery once again from what all the tease pictures and everything. So that's great to see. I mean, Kyle, you voted it as the best paint scheme of 2020, so you can see maybe why. They probably listened to the show and they're like, we got to bring it back for Kyle Cushman. So what are your thoughts on the upcoming Mercedes unveiling? This team is pretty much unbeatable lately. What are you expecting in terms of look, and then also on the virtual Grand Prix?
Yeah, there were some rumors last year that they were going to keep the black livery, but it didn't really seem like it was like a for sure thing. But it's really cool that they're going to keep the black livery. Now it is interesting that they're going to be revealing the car almost certainly before they announce Lewis Hamilton's re-signed, unless they're doing that as like a package deal or something. I don't really know, but I'm fascinated to see how that goes. If they have Valtteri Bottas there, or or what they do there, because normally at the car reveals they have team principal, all the big names, both drivers present, all that kind of stuff. But Lewis Hamilton doesn't have a contract to race this season, so I don't really know what's going to happen there. But yeah, if they don't touch the livery and just leave it as is, I would be extremely happy. I'd hope maybe a little bit more teal gets in there. Maybe we see some silver accents or something, but keep it as like a black primary. We'll see what they do, but hopefully it's good, because we'll be seeing it at the front quite a bit this season. So
I'm sure. Yeah. I just imagine George Russell just walks out, instead of.
I mean,
I just can't believe that they haven't announced Lewis yet, because, we would think that you would have a contract by now with the season about a month and a half or so, about 2 months away. It is, getting relatively close in racing terms, but remains to be seen what happens with Lewis Hamilton when you're watching this. Could already have been announced with the car reveal, so we do not know. But hopefully it's a good-looking car. That's all that really matters. Of course, it's going to be at the front of the grid this season. It's a Mercedes car in this turbo hybrid era. What else is there to really talk about? So that does it for the news and notes. That's kind of the minor things. But we do have some NASCAR announcements that came out over the past couple of days that we'll get into. right now. NASCAR will have heat races to set the lineup for the Bristol Dirt Race. The format is to be determined. It's not going to be your standard 2-lap qualifying. It's going to be heat races to set the grid. So we'll see what that looks like when it comes time for that. They have the dirt getting set up there in Bristol. So, yep. On to the next one. NASCAR will increase the Truck Series field from 32 to 36 trucks for all events. If no qualifying / rained out, it will be 40 trucks. So we'll see if they do get to 40 entries on a consistent basis this season. There's a lot of good trucks coming in for full-time basis and some part-time stuff as well throughout the season. So going to be interesting to follow that storyline. But they did not announce an extended playoff field, which is something that we've been talking about on this show quite a bit, just based off of the great lineup that we've got in the Truck Series, the amount of talent, the amount of quality across the entire board here with level playing field, and the amount of great trucks that we've got this season. And they're sticking to 10, and we really would have loved to see a bump up to 12, not only to make this silly season and the playoff predictions kind of easier to predict, but nonetheless, they are going to stick to 10, so it's going to make each race even more pivotal for these guys as the races go on. And the Xfinity Series field size will stay 36 when there's qualifying. But if there's no qualifying / rained out, they will be at 40 cars. So what do you make of the first bit of news there, Kyle, with the Truck Series and Xfinity Series lineup kind of expanding, and then the heat races for the Bristol Dirt Race?
Yeah, the expansion of the fields is one that makes a lot of sense when you look at the amount of new teams or extra vehicles added to lineups for teams that already exist, whether it's like Jordan Anderson going up to Xfinity or the abundance of extra trucks apparently that we're going to have this year. It's something that I was expecting. I wasn't sure how it was going to work with the lack of qualifying and everything, but they've figured that out as well. The one, you mentioned it there. I was really hoping that they would add a couple more spots in the Truck Series playoffs because it's more competitive of a field than Xfinity, and Xfinity has more for some reason. But yeah, for me, it should be 12, and then I guess 16 at the Cup Series level. I think it would be probably best if you did 12 across the board for competitive sake. But
I'd probably agree with
that. Nonetheless, 10 just seems really tiny for the amount of competitive trucks here, because as we'll get to later in the show, I had like 19 trucks as potential playoff. You had 18. Like, there's a lot of trucks that could go out there and win a single race and get their way into the playoffs. There's a lot of trucks there that can point their way into the playoffs. Like, it's insane. It's absolutely insane. So for me, I would have enjoyed it more if we expanded it to 12. I'm a little heartbroken that it's staying at 10, but then again, it's just going to make every race that much more important.
Yeah, and then the heat races as well. What do you think of the idea of that?
I'm glad that if they're going to do a gimmicky race, they're at least staying true to what it's supposed to be, the dirt scene and everything like that. They've done the heat races for all the Truck Series stuff on dirt, so I'm glad that they're at least doing that for the Cup Series one. But again, maybe that's going to be better for the entertainment of it, because they're going to have more shots at getting fun races, and just seeing the heat races and everything and like the Cup Series is going to be fun to see as well. But we've said it time and time again, but my hopes are not extraordinarily high for that race. Maybe if we get like a great heat race, it'll make up for the fact that we're not getting a spring Bristol race as we properly should. But regardless.
Oh, God. Yeah. You know what? This format seems like a great all-star race. Oh, we're not doing that. Oh. Hey, that seems like a pretty good idea, doesn't it? Bristol hosted the all-star race this past year. Oh, we could just switch it to dirt this year. Oh, we're going to take away with the best race of the year, the best track of the year with its normal racing surface, and put dirt over top of it. Lovely idea. Lovely, lovely idea. 250 laps around the bull ring. Oh, boy, on dirt.
250 laps is so much. Okay, anyways,
NASCAR is done with next-gen developments. Oh, boy. This is something we talked about on this show.
We just don't know. Like, we have nothing to go off of. We don't know if this is good or bad.
This car really is freaking me out. I got to be completely honest. Yep. The texting going forward, will only be tire tests or wheel force cars or organizational tests, which that'll be coming as the season rolls along. And then at the end of March at Martinsville, they're going on a short track for the first time, it seems, with this car after it is fully developed. We've not seen any tests with this next-gen car on a short track from what we know that has been publicly addressed to us and given to us in terms of news. And that will hopefully have the manufacturers of each car, and we'll have the release of what the cars will look like for the three manufacturers, Chevrolet, Ford, and Toyota, in the late spring they're reporting. So quote unquote late spring. What you want to defer or decide what late spring is, that's up to you. But yeah, I think this is maybe the biggest bit of news that I got from this entire bit of press release that they've done. They're done with testing this car. Kurt Busch was over at Charlotte Motor Speedway in January to kind of finalize things. He had a media thing that I watched as well, which was very interesting to see what he had to say about the car and what they actually had to go back and fix. And it was a lot about the steering and the steering column and how the vibrations and just making the steering box comfortable for a wide range of drivers, so that if they want more force feedback, then they can have that maneuverability and that functionality that the drivers obviously have their way of dealing with the car and how they feel behind the wheel. So that was pretty interesting to see that NASCAR didn't really have that right, and they said some parts weren't working as they were supposed to when they did the test back in December with Kurt Busch and Martin Truex Jr. Then when Kurt came back, they said that they'd done a better job and they had fixed most of the problems there. So I don't know what to say about this, Kyle. Honestly, this car is gonna make my hair gray by the time I'm 22. Like this is just so stressful to know that they're done now, and it is February, and we have an entire year before this car debuts, and they say that this is the best that they can put out for the upcoming season. And we talked about this in December before we left for our break, that they're coming down to the end of things in terms of finalizing it, and from all reports, the mile-and-a-half test did not go the greatest in terms of the racing product as well, not just the functionality of the cars. So the fact that they say that this is it and they only did one test with multiple cars on track is making a huge statement in terms of multiple, two cars. And they're making a big statement here that they think that this car is good enough with what they have. They've not put it in really prime racing conditions, different racing conditions. And that is a huge question mark as the season rolls along. We'll see what the test looks like on the short track when it comes time for Martinsville. I'm sure that will be open to the media and whatnot, so we'll get a little bit more of an insight then, which is, relatively close, end of March, so about 2 months away-ish from finding out what the cars may look like or how the car performs under the short track regulations. But what are your thoughts on this kind of bombshell bit of news? Because it is pretty big. This is the future of the sport we're talking about here, and it comes down to the car at the end of the day, not the driver. So what are you thinking here with this news?
It's nerve-wracking, I gotta say. It does feel kind of early in the process, but then when you look at the timeline, it also does kind of check out. But then you also think if they're done developing, well, last year this was supposed to be a car for this year, and this time last year there was no COVID to postpone it. So then why wasn't the car done for if you start looking at the whole timeline of things, like why can't you make more adjustments from here?
Imagine if it was this season, Kyle. Just imagine what we'd be going through with this season if the car was ready. I
know. It's nerve-wracking. And the reason why it's nerve-wracking is because NASCAR has kind of butchered it in the past. And this is such a big one because this is kind of a make or break point for NASCAR, and they need to kind of remedy some wrongs if they're going to kind of come back here. The fact that we haven't had more than two cars on track, that we haven't gone to a short track, all this kind of stuff is extremely nerve-wracking. But for all we know, they've got all the data to suggest that it's going to be a banger or whatever, and they go out, come into next year, and it's a smashing success and whatever. But it's definitely a little bit worrisome just because of the unknown. Like, we literally have nothing to go off of except for a two-car test on a Roval and an oval. Like, that's all we have from the 2 days. That's all we have. And they barely even raced close together when they did. So it's just the lack of knowledge that we have of it. That's the scary part. I don't really know if you can say that you have faith in NASCAR at this point, but you know what? There's really no point in worrying about it right now because there's nothing we can do about it, and it's still a decent ways away. We still got a full season until we see these cars, but yeah, I'm definitely nervous and was not expecting to see that announcement. It kind of just dropped in there over like the past week.
Yeah, you think it would be a little bit more well-known. It's like a pretty big bit of news.
You think that would be something that comes after a test or going into a test? Like, this is the last one that we're doing for development reasons, or this was the last one. But no, just kind of randomly at the end of January, beginning of February, they just kind of dropped that.
There is no excuse for this car not to be great. That's clear as day. That's the facts. They've had an extra year to prep this car. I know COVID took a massive hit, but for the amount of people that they take to the racetracks and stuff doing these tests, they can socially distance properly and still work on the car during these times. And there is absolutely no flippant excuse for this car to not come out of the gates better than its two previous successors there with the COT and the Generation 6 car. This next-gen car has to be better than both of them combined, in my opinion, just based off of how poorly those were received. Maybe the COT had some pretty good racing throughout, but just the safety hazards with the big wing, and it didn't look great. I mean, it depends on who you talk to. Some people love it, some people hate it. I'm kind of a neutral on it. There were some times where I liked it, sometimes I didn't. More so near the beginning of it with 2008, I liked it a little bit more than maybe 2010 when it kind of got abolished and they put the actual normal spoiler on it. But and then they transitioned into that weird kind of hybrid phase in 2011, 2012, and then the new car coming out in 2013. And we've had that car basically ever since in terms of just the body style and the configuration. There's been rules packages. There have been so many changes, engine packages, so many things since that car debuted back in 2013. Yeah. And they haven't quite found the bright spot with it. I think they had it in 2014 and they mucked it up when they decided to switch things up every single race, every single weekend, it seemed. I think they had something pretty damn solid in 2014, just based off of the horsepower and everything. The racing
look
product.
At every single time somebody posts a clip on Twitter, it's always a random 2014 race and everyone freaks out about it because it's good.
It is qualifying back then when the car was fast and it was beautiful. ESPN graphics during the qualifying. Yeah, that too. With the single car graphics, right? Yeah. And then you had, you're racing in 2014, Chicagoland, Texas, Charlotte.
To be fair, I'm sure the drivers also impact that. Still seeing some names that have since retired, I think, is probably a big factor as well. But it's clear what fans want at the root of the sport, and hopefully this new car delivers it.
Yeah, and the thing is that I'm really skeptical on if they go with the 550 horsepower package moving forward. I think that's the big thing. You can't, with the amount of decisions they've made over this offseason alone, where they're moving to 750 at some select racetracks over this season already. We're doing it on the short tracks. There's no way that in their right mind they can believe that the 550 horsepower package over the past 2 years of experimenting and even into this season as well is going to be better than a 750 horsepower package with a lower spoiler, smaller spoiler on the back of that thing. If they just give us that, I think the drivers can deliver a product in itself that's going to be very entertaining. But if
the way it is right now with that 550 package, 3/10 is like 3 seconds at some tracks. Like
exactly.
And it's close. It's close for the sake of being close.
Kansas.
And I'd rather see driver skill and fast cars with a 3-second margin of victory.
Exactly.
Than cars tuned down, made artificially close in a 3/10. And I know a lot, like at the beginning, people had some high hopes for it because it's close. But
that all-star race changed it all because it had a decent race.
Yep. The cracks have been shown. So
the restarts only do so much when they're 3 and 4 wide, and we haven't seen as many wrecks or as much chaos as we probably would have thought with the amount of close, compact restarts that we've had with them. And I think that was a really big draw that we saw in the All-Star race. And NASCAR's like, okay, we can build off of this and move forward with it. And it's kind of been anything but in a lot of instances. They got the super speedway package down pat. Largely the short track package has been pretty solid as well. Road courses, it is driver skill mostly at that point. If they're going to the 750 horsepower package with them this season, A+, you're getting that right. But it's just the 1.5 miles, and that's what we have the most of on the calendar, and we need the 750 horsepower package. The driver has to go into the corner, drive it in deep, use the throttle, feather it whenever they need to.
Yep.
It just makes it a little bit more demanding on the drivers. And when you look at them back then, looking at old highlights, they were exhausted coming out of the car back then. Now you don't see it as much. It's not as much sweat. It's not as much exhaustion after a 500-mile race. It is easier to try and handle these cars now. It's not as much stress on the drivers. It comes down to how well the car is set up. And with no practice and qualifying now for a large majority of the season, it really does. It's coming off the hauler great, and that's the car that you've got basically, and you're there with what you've got. So hopefully next season we see practice and qualifying return. Hopefully COVID is gone, or to a large extent, if not all gone by next year. Fingers crossed, knock on wood, whatever you want to do. And then we can get back to what the sport was built on, the foundation, practice, qualifying, and a solid race car that people can really enjoy week in and week out. So on that long tangent there, NASCAR is done with the next gen testing, if you didn't realize, and we'll see what their the bodies and what the cars look like because they're going to continue with this, making each manufacturer look different. And that's always a great thing as well. That was something that they had lacking in the previous generations of cars. At least
hopefully we see some more differentiation.
Exactly. We've seen different manufacturers, different makes of the manufacturers, Camry, Fusion, Chevrolet SS. Now we got the Camaro, Mustang, Camry. We'll see if Toyota maybe goes to a Supra. We'll see. They've done that in the Xfinity series. That remains to be seen. But nonetheless, an interesting bit of news there with the next generation. And then one quick rule change that they also tossed out there. If a crew member behind the pit wall grabbing a tire loses balance and puts a hand on pit road, that will not be a penalty this season. I think Austin Dillon may have suffered from that this past season, or a couple of guys have. The guy reaches over the wall and then just kind of loses balance. It's always funny kind of what happens in that situation, but it
happens more often than you'd think.
I know. So they put their hand down on the pit wall and then in the pit box, and then they get a penalty for it, a drive-through penalty. So that's always just very unfortunate circumstances, and it shouldn't dictate a guy's race if it's late in the going, early in the going, whatever the case may be. This is a great rule change by NASCAR here. So thumbs up on that one. And then NASCAR will have rapid COVID-19 tests at tracks this season for anyone who gets recommended by a doctor to take one. That's what all reports are indicating. It's not been officially confirmed, but Adam Stern reports it. It's basically 100% guarantee. And then also one little bit of interesting news as well on Ryan Preece. He does not get to keep the owner points from last season because they are going as an open car entry this season. That will go to the 77 entry in the Spire Motorsports. Exactly. And so that means Preece, they have this kind of rule here for the first two races with the road course and in Homestead that the owner points kind of from last season translate over if they're trying to make their way in for an open car. Preece is going to have to race his way in for these, and hopefully that the Daytona 500 entry that he gets into, if he makes the field, first off, is going to be good enough, the result, to carry him into those next two races, because we don't have qualifying for those other two races after that. So we'll see what happens in terms of that. So what do you make of those three little bits of news to the rule change, the COVID-19 test, and then, of course, our beloved charter system?
Yeah, the rule change is just one that kind of is common sense. It was kind of being a bit nitpicky because somebody losing balance and falling over and placing a hand down is just kind of like, it's not the way that the rule was designed to be. So I'm glad that they're kind of fixing that and not punishing people for losing balance, because that's just kind of a strange thing there.
Pointless.
For the COVID stuff, good. The more COVID testing we get, the better. Last year was questionable at best, the fact that they didn't have mandatory COVID testing and everything. So if we get more of that, I can't see that as a bad thing, of course. And then what was the third one again?
We've got the Brian Preece.
Oh, yes, for Preece. That's strange. Why would one car's results go to somebody else for making the field? Like that
because that charter goes there, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's why it is.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, that doesn't make sense, people.
What's the point? Yeah.
Like the charters are one thing, but the results that car has should stay with the owner in that car. Like, it's not like that charter is going to Spire and then Spire is running Ryan Preece in the 37. That's not the situation here. So why should they get credit for this other team and this other driver's results from last year? So I don't like that. It's dumb. Yeah.
Move on.
Charters. Gotta love it.
Yeah, you gotta love it. So that does it for the news and notes for today's episode.
Yes.
Let's move into the Rolex 24, Kyle, the big one that kind of kicks off the entire Speed Week kind of portion of the year. It's not NASCAR, but we had quite a few NASCAR drivers.
owned.
Yeah,
IMSA,
I'll give it that.
I guess technically.
We'll give it to you. A little bit of the technicality, but we got some. What a race, though, Kyle. I know you didn't get to watch some of the beginning and the ending part of it, but for the parts that you did see, this was an incredible Rolex 24. Good. This is like an historic Rolex 24 because
instant classic.
The past 3 years that I've watched the race for a large portion of it, it's been nowhere near what this was this year. The DPI class alone would have been an entertaining race in itself, but the amount of twists and turns
by themselves, and it would have been great.
Exactly. That's all we would have needed. And we'll get into what kind of the finishing order, the records that were broken after this one as well a little bit later on. But just as an overall theme here before we get into who won and everything like that, just the racing point of view here, the Rolex 24, the Daytona road course for these cars, the lap traffic, every single element, the team camaraderie that takes, team building. They mentioned that quite a bit throughout the broadcast. Yeah. I was going to maybe think about staying up for the whole thing, but I just couldn't. Schoolwork took a little bit of priority here for the next day, but just your overall sense of the entire great race that we saw on Saturday into Sunday.
It was spectacular. Like, it was so good. And it wasn't just even the DPIs. It was kind of all the class. I think LMP3 might be the only exception because it wasn't all that close.
On. Yeah. Everything kind of spread out too early.
But man, great racing across the board, whether it's in DPI where you had multiple cars leading for multiple hours throughout this entire race. You had the storyline of Kobayashi going in overnight and chopping off 50 seconds or something like that. Like, the dude was otherworldly. Whether it's you look down to GT Le Mans in their last iteration of the Rolex 24 before they changed up the GT classes there in IMSA. You have a great battle between the Corvettes throughout most of this race, and then some late comers at the end of that race trying to mix things up, and then Jordan Taylor wrecking the car, or almost wrecking the car, in celebration after the race.
That's hilarious.
GTD as well, not a little bit surprised in that one, how that race went. It wasn't as competitive as I thought, but I gotta say, the DPI race alone, and then mix in that battle that the Corvettes had the entire race. LMP2 was pretty solid as well. I got to say, this was a phenomenal race, and a great way to kind of kick off the kind of big competitions here with IMSA getting going first.
Yeah, well, we talked about this on our last episode. Make sure to go watch that, kind of what we were talking about a little bit prior to this one, to get a gauge or sense of what we were thinking going into it. We had a pretty good spot on kind of analysis of what was going to be coming into this race. We covered everything in terms of the classes, and we saw which drivers were going to be successful, what teams we thought were going to be successful. And for the large part of it, we were right to an extent for at some point in the race, maybe not the ending, the final result matchup with what we were thinking, but I think at every point in time, we had a prediction right. And I had LMP3 right, LMP2 right for a couple of maybe hour or two at some point in time. You got obviously 2 correct. I got the 1 correct. JTD maybe was the one we definitely missed out on because it was such a curveball that actually did win the race. But overall, this entire event was just spectacular. Props to the broadcasters, everybody that was involved for that, because 24 hours of broadcasting straight is just a remarkable achievement. The amount of endurance it takes to talk about stuff for that long, it is really remarkable to be a part of, and the shifts they take and who talks about what and what analysis and what one person brings compared to the other, and then just the overall product itself into the nighttime, which was spectacular. So many different incidents. We started off with a wreck in the first coming to the green flag. Like, it was just madness. That was kind of like the clue that this race was going to be incredible from the start, and it really was. But let's look at how the actual race finished off, because that is the big thing.
Yeah.
Because throughout the entire event, it was back and forth. We had so many different leaders in the DPI class. 31 car with Felipe, Nasser, Chase Elliott, and the entire bunch there. they got off to a really hot start. Felipe Nasr did a sensational job for that. Peppo Durrani did a great job as well behind the wheel of that car. Chase Elliott lacked in his first stint, I'd say. Just wasn't quite up to the par to his teammates, so that's really lost quite a bit of time compared to the other people. But as the night went on and his stints got longer and how he got more comfortable with the car, you can see that net gain or net loss wasn't as great for Chase Elliott. So props to him. It's a big ask to go in there and try and compete with these, sports car drivers. So props to him on making his Rolex 24 debut. We'll talk about where they finished in a little bit. But the 48 Ally Racing team, they were really sensational as the night went on. Kobayashi was the standout driver in this event, in my opinion, and I'm sure for you too. Just how much he was able to gain for his teammates' lack of performance at some point in times. Jimmy Johnson was a little bit disappointing at some point in time, but he had his moments here and there where he had the lead.
Clean air, he was really strong.
From, I think it was Pagano after a stint, or it may have been Conway, if I'm not mistaken. Rockenfeller, sorry. He might have had the lead there, and then Johnson got in, but he stayed relatively close to the car that passed him. So props to that entire team. It's a pretty remarkable effort for them. We'll talk about where they finished as well. But it really came down to the 10 car and the 01 for Chip Ganassi Racing. Obviously, Wayne Taylor Racing's number 10 that has won this event 2 years in a row. Could they make it 3? And they actually did. And we'll talk about the finish here quickly because that was just sensational.
Yeah.
It came down to the last half an hour of this event. It came down to pit strategy of all things. You would think it would come down to raw speed, but it came down to pit strategy at the end of it. And what a call by Konica Minolta Racing and the entire Wayne Taylor kind of team that they built over there. They just nailed the strategy. When they lost the lead that they had it going into the second to last stint, they had the lead and then they lost it by quite some margin. They were at least like 8 seconds behind when they came out on cold tires, and that was just a massive thing as the night went on and into the morning. How cold tires really impacted the performance on the outlap and how much time you would lose. And I believe it was the 01 and the 55 or some, I think it was the 55 if I'm not mistaken there with the Mazda entry, but they were passing the 10 car, and it seemed like they were kind of set sail, and it didn't seem like the 10 had a chance, but they fueled on the second to last pit stop so that they could short pit at the end, and they only put on 2 tires compared to the other 2 teams that put on 4, and they had to put longer time in fuel, about 4 more seconds worth of fuel into the car, and that's all the gap that Filipe Albuquerque needed it in the 10 car. But it seemed like Renger van de Zande in the 01 was going to make one heck of a race out of it, and unfortunately we were denied by that with a flat right rear tire with about 7.5 minutes to go. Think about that, 24 hours of racing, and it all comes down to 7.5 minutes, and he gets denied the chance of going for it at the end. He caught him with about 20 minutes to go or so, and then dirty air hit, and he was pushing too hard, and the tire ended up flat. And that was not the first instance for that 01 car to suffer from a tire failure. That was the second time. I believe it was Scott Dixon behind the wheel during about 3-4 hours left in the race, around that number, and they had that same failure, stayed on the lead lap, and they were able to recover from another caution flag, so then they got caught back up, and then that led them into the chance of having a shot at the overall win for the Rolex 24, but unfortunately we were denied that. Really entertaining battle. It seemed like that would go down to the final lap of that race, but Albuquerque was able to get a sigh of relief. He got to breathe a little bit for those last 7.5 minutes because there was about 6 seconds back to the battle for second between the 55 and the 48. But at the end of the day, Konica Minolta's number 10, my pick to win the Rolex 24, comes through and takes the checkered flag. 24 hours of racing, they get it done. What a great victory for them. Helio Castroneves, Ricky Taylor, Alexander Rossi, Filipe Albuquerque win the Rolex 24. The first win for Acura in the Rolex 24 as well, which is a pretty big thing. Obviously, this team moved from Cadillac over to Acura over the offseason. They didn't have much time to get the chassis and everything sorted, but they obviously did a pretty damn good job because they ended up on top after 24 hours of racing against the best of the best in sports car competition. So it was their 5th overall win as well in terms of Wayne Taylor Racing, and the second team ever to get 3 consecutive Rolex 24 titles, the first being Chip Ganassi Racing in, I think it was 06 to 08. So kind of a bit of irony in the end of that. And then the record that was broken, which really proves evident how entertaining this race was, the first time ever that 5 DPIs finished on the lead lap is truly remarkable. The 31 had some problems overnight, so they were kind of taken out of it. But the 60, the 48, the 55, the 01, and managed to stay on the lead lap after that pitting, after having to pit there at the end for the flat tire. And then, of course, the 10, the overall winner as your lead lap finishers for the Rolex 24. But I know you didn't really get to see the finish there as much as you would have liked to, Kyle, but I'm sure you looked at the highlights. So what did you make of the spectacular finish after 24 hours racing? It came down to the final minutes.
Oh, it was awesome. And it was funny because I was watching it and then I had to pay attention to something on the broadcast, and I came back and then all of a sudden the 01 had a tire going down. And I was like, wait, did they make contact? Like, what the hell happened here? And so I texted you about it, and you thought I was kidding when I asked.
I thought you were like, Good one, Kyle. Man.
But no, it was, yeah.
Because you said what just happened, and I'm like, that's something that people would say, I can't believe that just happened, but you got but never mind, go on.
The heartbroken a little bit that we didn't get to see how that would have played out at the end, because that would have been something special. But hey, the 10 played it right. They played the strategy right. They were good consistently. They came on later as overnight. The Acuras kind of came to life versus the Cadillacs, which were very strong early on. Would have been nice to see if the 31 didn't have their issues, got stuck in third gear there, and just kind of their day was over from there. I think with 8 hours to go, something along those lines. It was relatively early morning, but yeah, exactly. So that would have been nice to see because, of course, with Pipo Derani, Felipe Nasser, Mike Conway, like those guys would have been in the car late on in the game there, and it would have been fun to see how they would have impacted things because the 48 got close as well. They got within 5 seconds of the lead at the end of that race there, so that would have been another Cadillac to kind of have in the mix there. Obviously, the 01 was right there potentially to the win before that flat tire, so would have been another car to toss in there in the mix for the victory. So unfortunately, we didn't get to see that. But no, the 10, it was kind of storybook a little bit there. The fact that they switch over from Cadillac to Acura. They have Ricky Taylor, Alexander Rossi, Helio Castroneves, but then Filipe Albuquerque as well in there. The fact that Castroneves gets the Rolex 24, Rossi gets the Rolex 24, Taylor and Albuquerque get their second. It would have been a great storyline as well, though, if Renger van der Zande, the guy who was dropped by Wayne Taylor Racing, goes out and passes them for the win as well. But no, a fantastic race and a very, very good ending as well to a race that was consistently very entertaining throughout. And yeah, they've set the bar very high going into next year, I got to say.
Yeah, that Chip Ganassi racing car was flying at the end, and I was really surprised.
I thought they were going to take it. I did.
Yeah, I thought so too, just based off of the rate he was catching him, and you watch the intervals, just whether you hit lap traffic right, because that was what it was coming down to at the end. But that tire disadvantage that the 10 had compared to the 01 did pay a lot at the end as well. Yeah. But it is actually funny that the 01 on 4 tires actually gets the puncture and
exactly
the 10. So it is
and their second puncture
crazy.
Too.
Exactly. And for a 3-man team over there in terms of the drivers for the 01, Kevin Magnussen did a spectacular job for his first sports car entry, and Scott Dixon, you come to expect that he's going to deliver in anything that he's in. And then, of course, at the end, Renger van der Zande just did all he could, and the car let him down at the end of the day. So very unfortunate that we got denied that at the end, but I'm sure it would have been spectacular either way, and it was spectacular at the end, even with the 7.5 minutes that allowed me to actually breathe for the first time in 30 minutes. It felt like, because I really wanted to get one prediction right, and I'm happy that I got the overall winner right. Yeah. So
I do wish that I did end up going with the 01 there, because then it would have been even better, the finish as
bragging
well.
Rights, man. I would have been losing it.
Yeah,
I would have been losing it.
But no, I gotta say, this was like last year. I tuned into a decent amount of the Rolex 24, but this was really the first IMSA race that I properly paid attention to throughout the entire duration of the race. And I gotta say, I'm going to be tuning into a handful more of these as the season goes along. There's a lot of great storylines and an absolute banger of an opening race here.
bring on Sebring. That's all I can say. That's going to be coming on later on this year before Le Mans comes.
What is that, March
as the season
coming up?
I believe it is.
I believe
yeah.
so.
Yeah, 12 hours of Sebring. So we'll talk about that when the time comes for that event later on. But we've got LMP2 to get here. Who won that one? I should have gone with this one. It's a no-brainer for me. The number 18 won this category.
Yeah, of course. Come on now.
I feel so betrayed. I should have.
They even have a Kyle on the team too. Like it was.
I know. I screwed it up.
Swing and a miss.
Yeah, that's for sure. None of us got this one right. Kyle's entry finished 9th there with the 20 car. I finished 6th there with the 47.
The 20 high class had some issues early on. So there was 3 LMP2 Oricas that had some issues and dropped out fairly early on. Through like half of this race, there was like 3 retirements, and they were all LMP2 Oricas. So kind of tough there. The defending race winner in LMP2 as well, the 81 Dragon Speed, dropped out pretty early on in the running as well. So a bit of a heartbreaker there for my pick, Robert Kubica. So you win the LMP2 one as well there. 6th place finish for your 47 car. So you're up 2-0 right now. So
for right now, for right now.
For right now.
Yeah, so the number 18 Aero Motorsport entry of Dwight Merriman, Kyle Tilley, Ryan Dalziel, if I'm saying that correctly, so. Paul Loop Chatan completed 787 laps. Just think about that incredible lap total. That's remarkable. And they finished 6th overall as well here. Yeah. So that's really great for them. So finishing behind those 5 DPI cars that finished on the lead lap, 6th overall for LMP2. Very impressive stuff there from the number 18 Aero Motorsport entry. LMP3, the kind of thing that we talked about a little bit earlier on, a little bit denied in terms of action throughout the entire race. The number 74 Riley Motorsports entry of Gar Robertson, Spencer Piggott. I should have gone with this entry. I was looking at Piggott and I was thinking that he could have gone. I just didn't quite have it in me to get that one right. Stott Andrews and Oliver Askew. So the two. One former IndyCar driver, one current IndyCar driver. They complete 757 laps en route to their class victory. They finished 18th overall. And Kyle, you got this one right. You get the prediction right, so it goes 2-1 for me still. But it's got to feel good to get that one right. Yeah, no,
that was probably the one that I felt probably most confident with, just because when you looked at the LMP3 field, if it just came down to a clean race, they had the most skill on their lineup there with Askew and Piggott, and came to fruition. So pretty happy with that one. And pretty decent size, margin of victory as well, with the 3-lap victory there as well.
Yeah. I went with Colin Braun. Damn it. Can't blame me for it, though.
6th place finish.
I'll take it. Yeah, 6th place finish. So 2 6s there in a row for myself in terms of predictions. GTLM, you get this one right as well, Kyle. You went with the Chevrolet. I felt pretty good about this one in terms of my Porsche prediction. I thought they could maybe go up there and contend. Mm-hmm. They had a good car early on. They just had some problems throughout the race a little bit, but they still managed to end up I believe it was 5th. So yeah, not too bad. They were up in the top 3 for portions, but I think their pit strategy was a little bit off in some cases. So kind of deny me of that, but it was between the 2 Corvettes in this category with the 3 and the 4, and the 3 ends up prevailing. They had such a tumultuous race up and down. They had some pit penalties, I believe it was, and then they kind of fell back, and then they recovered based off of pure pace alone.
The 3 and the 4 were trading spots quite a bit throughout the race too as well. So it was very much up in the air which Corvette was going to come out on top late. And then I think, what was it? The 62 Risi Competizione was out front for a little bit there at the end before they had
Ferrari.
So that was adding some spice to it as well. But no, I felt good about that one. Jordan Taylor, is tough to bet against him in any kind of GT class. And the Corvettes, I went with them. I wasn't sure whether to go with the Sims team, the 4 there, or the 3. But I'm glad that one came through there.
Yeah, congratulations to Antonio Garcia, Jordan Taylor. Big weekend for the Taylor family, being victorious across the board in terms of Rolex 24 entries. And Nicky Katzberg completed 770 laps to beat their sister car, the number 4, by 3.519 seconds. So the closest margin of victory in terms of the classes across the board for the Rolex 24 there.
Technically, because the DPI, that's right.
Yeah, and they finished 11th overall in that one as well. So really good showing there for the number 3 car that had ups and downs, but they ended up coming ahead of their sister car then, the number 4.
Final GTLM Rolex 24 before they change it up with the GT classes and stuff going to next year. So nice to see the Corvettes come out on top there.
Yeah, pretty good looking cars as well. Yellow Corvette and silver Corvette.
I'm a fan of that yellow Corvette. It's so pretty. Oh,
it's so beautiful. So beautiful. And then probably the biggest surprise, honestly, of them all, Kyle, is the GTD class.
I think so. I think so.
Panned out. Maybe we're a bit surprised on how it all played out in terms of competitive nature across the board. Mercedes just translated their Formula One success and took it over to sports car for this one because they finished 1-2 in the GTD class, something that nobody thought was coming. Even the drivers themselves, the team themselves, did not expect to win this category and win this class. Yeah. And they somehow did it with a 1-2 finish. The number 57 Windward Racing Mercedes of Russell Ward, Philip Ellis, Andy Donchier, if I'm saying that correctly, it's Dutch, and then Mauro Engel completed 745 laps, finishing 22nd overall. It's the first win for all 4 of those drivers at the Rolex 24 as well. So an unproven group that goes out there and takes down the likes of Ryan Briscoe and a couple of big names down there in the GTD class. And Mercedes just wiped the floor with them.
Some big names were down there. And I think they were saying as well on the broadcast that was a team that last year was in the Michelin Endurance Cup, kind of like the second IMSA there. And like they weren't even like a dominant team there, and they make the step up.
But they weren't.
Yeah, exactly. You would expect a team that comes out and wins GTD, making the step up from the Endurance Cup there, to be like a team that's dominant there, and they make the step up and win there. But no, a fantastic display there, and kind of ran the show in GTD a little bit. It wasn't anything where like we saw a lot of cars in the lead there. They were kind of held it for a decent amount there in that race.
Yeah, and that means I come out victorious in terms of overall positioning with the Rolex 24. In terms of overall finishing, Kyle gets 2 correct.
Let me do some math here. I think you still come out on
average?
top, but I'm gonna do average finish for them all.
Okay, so but you have to go by you have to do by categories on how many drivers are in each class. Okay, well, we're bringing out the math.
So 4.4 average finish for your finishers in class, and for myself, I'm definitely below you. Yeah, by a decent bit here. Oh, 6.2. So
bravo,
the ones that kill me are the LMP2 going out of the race early there and finishing 9th in class. That one's rough. And then the GTD finishing 14th as well for me. I took a swing there, didn't pay off, but I'll take the 2 class victories, I guess.
I'll take the 16 finishing 4th there at the end of it with the Porsche. The BMW was the GTLM. My apologies there for getting that wrong in terms of the manufacturer. But the Porsche I thought was going to be pretty good in this one. They got denied last year. I think they were going to be one to beat, and they were pretty solid third throughout the race, finishing 4th there at the end. But feel pretty good about that one. But overall, got the overall winner right. We got 2, so 3 out of the 5 classes we actually between the 2 of us.
I'm pretty happy with that.
Exactly. And then I don't think anybody had the GTD class picked correctly. No. And then the LMP2 one, just a little bit unfortunate there on how all the circumstances played out for both of us. We weren't really close on either of our predictions there, 6th and 9th overall, but nonetheless, I still feel pretty damn solid about what we did. But let's take a look about what the NASCAR drivers got up to in this one just quickly. Jimmy Johnson's number 48 Ally Cadillac Racing ride was pretty sensational. Kobayashi really compensated for the lack of skill by some of the other ones. And that's why I went with the 10 car to win it overall. I thought that they had the best overall lineup with this kind of sports car, and I think that really did pay off. Albuquerque did his job at the end, and Taylor let him have the reins at the end as well. I thought Taylor might have taken it to the end, but they gave it over to Albuquerque, and that was probably the right decision at the end of the day. But Jimmy Johnson's entry finishing 2nd there. Kobayashi did a masterful job. I wonder what the net gain it was when he got into the car overall throughout the day, because it had to have been something spectacular. Many seconds he gained on his competition when some of his other teammates faltered or had something go wrong. But very impressive stuff there from that entire team. Jimmy Johnson still does not have a Rolex 24 watch to go to his illustrious trophy collection.
His third second place finish.
Yeah, that's heartbreaking for Jimmy. But he says he's going to be back at some point in time, and we hope to see him back. Every time he gets back in here, it seems like they're getting closer. 5 seconds, the margin of victory here, really, to winning it. So it's the
just
closest
bring
he's
that
ever
team
been.
back next year.
I would. I think there's something pretty special about that. And please bring that livery back. Oh my God.
Oh, yes, please.
I thought it looked so good under the lights. I thought it changed color. It seemed like it was just so pink under the lights, but then it seemed like more purpley and more dullish pink during the day. Just masterful job there across the board there for the number 48 team. Chase Elliott's entry with the number 31 Whelen Engineering Racing Cadillac, finishing 8th overall, 6th in its class, had the issues that we talked about a little bit earlier on with getting stuck in third gear there. So unfortunate for Chase Elliott. I'm sure he's going to be beating himself up a little bit after this one in terms of his performance compared to his teammates, but it's a trial by fire basis, and you're never going to learn if you don't.
He'll be better for the experience.
Exactly. And I'm sure this is not the last time we will see Chase Elliott race in this event. He's very, very young, 25 years of age. He's got quite the future in store for him in terms of the future for that. Austin Dillon's entry there and Cody Ware's entry as well, the number 51 RWR Eurasia Ligier, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I think it's Ligier from the broadcast. LMP2 car finished 10th overall and 4th in its class, so pretty impressive stuff there from Austin Dillon's entry. I didn't actually see him, I felt like, in the broadcast at all, but nonetheless, Cody Ware and Austin Dillon bringing the car home one piece, and I think it's
decent little finish there
for Austin Dillon for moving forward here with the Daytona Road Course on the calendar. And we'll see what his entry does for the Clash as well when he's going to be racing there in a week's time. And then the last one for terms of NASCAR drivers, AJ Allmendinger's number 60 Meyershank Racing Acura finished 4th in the DPI class and 4th overall. So very impressive stuff there from Allmendinger. Had to balance the broadcasting side of things and race at the same time. No easy feat there for AJ Allmendinger, but very impressive stuff too. I'm sure is going to be a very productive 2021 season across the board for him, across all forms of motorsports. It's going to be very, very fun to watch him. So very good showing there, I'd say, overall from NASCAR across the board, finishing no lower than 8th overall in the actual race itself. So what we expect from those entries in terms of the class that they're in and the rides that they're in, but nonetheless, that's still pretty solid overall. So any big takeaways, I guess, as your final thoughts for the Rolex 24 before we get into the Truck Series preview, Kyle?
Yeah, it's unfortunate we didn't get to see where that 31 would have finished overall because they would have been right in the hunt there at the end. But I think the big thing is just kind of how competitive that Rick Ware entry was with Cody Ware there and obviously Austin Dillon. I got to say I was very impressed by Austin Dillon there. He's not known as a road racer in NASCAR or anything like that. I think there was some stat about him not having any top 15 finishes at road courses or something like that, which is remarkable to say because Kaz Gralla went in there and had their best finish in quite some time in like one day's notice. But anyways, the fact that he was able to step into that car and didn't look that out of place, I think is very, very promising coming into the season when there's so many road courses on the schedule and you need to at least be solid on them to have a really good shot at making it into the playoffs on points if you're not able to get a win somewhere. So I think that was the most impressive one for me. Jimmy Johnson's pace in open, in clean air was good to see. Needs to work on the traffic, but of course that's something that you would expect, and hopefully he'll be able to take this experience into his IndyCar campaign. But yeah, no, a very, very fun Rolex 24. Some big names involved this year to varying degrees of success, and just kind of fires me up even more for the upcoming season.
What would you give a grade out of 10 for this? We got to grade this. I feel like it was just such a great race, but out of 10, what would you say the Rolex 24 was? The 59th running of it, that is.
I'll give it a clean A. Just out
of 10, you goofball.
Okay,
out of 10.
Well, you said grade.
I said I said out of 10 though.
Okay, fine. Well, I didn't hear you say out of 10. I heard you say grade, so I gave a grade.
Okay.
Out of 10, I'll give it a 9.
Okay, I had the same.
Okay.
Sorry,
well,
my apologies. I'll be clear next time. Sorry.
Well, I gave both, so there you go.
Okay, A for me then as well. 9 out of 10. I think that's just. I think that's almost as good as the Rolex 24 was going to get. Honestly,
yeah, would have been a 10 out of 10 if we got to see how that last battle for the DPIs would and the overall would have played out if there wasn't the puncture there.
If there was something that
it really did come down to the last lap there. I think then it's a 10 out of 10, but. consistent action the entire time, great racing the entire time, storylines the entire time. Fantastic race.
For sure. Couldn't have said it better myself. Really great running of the Rolex 24. Happy that that's the way that we start off the 2021 main stuff that's happening with motorsports. And what a way to start. Congratulations to all the winners across the board there for the Rolex 24. It is no easy feat to get that Rolex watch and have the bragging rights that goes along with it. So congratulations once again to all of the winners, and a special shout out to the Canadians as well for competing in the race on top of all that. So it's time for the Truck Series season preview. 2021 is upon us. The third tier of NASCAR motorsports with the Xfinity Series and Cup Series coming up in the next 2 episodes. So make sure you stay tuned for that. So we're going to be looking at the schedule a little bit, refresh your brain a little bit on what the season is going to be looking like. And then we'll get into some categories here. We've got most wins, surprise driver of the year, biggest disappointment, bounce back driver of the year, Rookie of the Year. We got some interesting candidates for that one in the Truck Series. Regular season champion, so who's going to get there before the playoffs start and who's going to be getting those extra bonus points. Who's going to be making the playoffs, our championship 4. And, of course, we got to make our preseason championship prediction.
Of course.
Who's going to be the champion holding the trophy come season's end. That is all is all in store, so make sure you stay tuned to the end for that one. But let's take a look at the calendar here before we get into everything else. So it starts off next Friday, Daytona, under the lights there. Going to be great.
Yes,
Truck
please.
Series always delivers. Then we stay in Daytona for the next one there. Previously going to be Homestead. Now it is the Daytona Road Course, so they made that scheduling change. We'll see what that track provides this time around instead of hopefully it's a bit more positive than last year's race. 44 laps around the Daytona Road Course there. Then we get a couple of weeks off. Then we go to Las Vegas out west for that race. Then we go to Atlanta, Bristol on the dirt. So they are the second series on that dirt track for Bristol. Xfinity Series is not on that track for this upcoming season. It's just the Cup Series and the Truck Series. And then they go to Richmond once again. Kansas in May, Darlington again this year, Circuit of the Americas making its triumphant debut into the sport this year with all 3 series visiting there on May 22nd for the trucks on the Saturday with the doubleheader with the Xfinity Series that day as well. Then we got Charlotte Motor Speedway, May 28th. Then Texas Motor Speedway for that kind of all-star weekend there. So the trucks are there that weekend. Nashville Super Speedway returns to the Truck Series schedule as well. They provide some pretty good racing there. Out of all 3 series, I'm expecting the Truck Series to probably be the best on that track. Then we go to Pocono. Once again, Knoxville, that's the big change as well with the dirt track. No Eldora this year. We've got Knoxville as the dirt track for the Truck Series this year. And, of course, we have the Bristol Dirt. So 2 dirt races for the trucks. Watkins Glen is the big one as well as the regular season finale for the Truck Series on August 7th. So a very early start to the playoffs there on August 20th for the Truck Series. But the Watkins Glen race is going to be one heck of a race when it comes down to making that last little point in or out. Stages are going to be crucial. The strategy is going to be incredible that entire weekend for the Truck Series. Because when we look at this, it could come down to a tie, 2 points, whatever it may be, with just how tightly compact and how competitive this Truck Series field is this season. But then we get into the playoffs. We've got the first round.
Very fun first round.
With Gateway, Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. So fingers crossed come September 5th that they are allowed to travel up north of the border for that one. Then we've got Bristol rounding out that round of 10. Going to be a fun one there nonetheless. So remember, Kyle Busch cannot race in any of these races as well. So it is just the playoff guys as the season rolls along here for the final couple of weeks. Then we go to the round of 8 there with Las Vegas. They go out there for the second time. I think that's the only track they go to 2 times this entire year, which is pretty incredible.
So, yeah.
If I'm not mistaken. So that's saying something. But the Truck Series at Las Vegas Motor Speedway is always actually a really good race. So
yes.
Looking forward to that one. And then we've got Talladega and Martinsville to round out the round of 8. So then we've got 4 eliminations after that one to lead into the championship finale in Phoenix once again on November the 5th on a Friday night. So pretty interesting playoffs, that's for sure. We got lots of things to get to. It would make so much sense if NASCAR bumped it up to a round of 12. So then it's 4 eliminations, then 4 eliminations. But they're deciding to go with 2 still in that first round, 4 then for the next one. So a little bit of a brain tease or kind of a mad libs there, I guess. Yeah, to an extent, but a very intriguing schedule. Watkins Glen, we previewed this when it was announced. Watkins Glen was the big one that we looked at. Knoxville as well. Canadian Tire Motorsports Park always delivers. We've seen some incredible last corner battles there. We're wrecking essentially in that last corner. Not really battles.
John Hunter Nemechek's back, so.
The second guy wiping somebody out in first, essentially, is what it comes down to that final corner. Hopefully we get that again this season. I would love to see some Tempers Flare in
Hopefully
Canada.
we just get there this season.
Fingers crossed on that. So that's what the schedule is looking like for this season. Now, let's get into the categories, Kyle.
Let's do it.
All right. Most wins on the Truck Series season. What are we thinking here? I think it is 22 races in total, if I'm not mistaken, this year as well. So we're going to give the driver we think and how many wins they're going to be getting this season as well. Okay? I want to make sure that we see if we put the number out there. What are we going to have? So
who have you go first? You go first.
You want me to go first?
Yeah, because I didn't prepare a number of wins. So you go first.
Okay. All right. The most wins of the Truck Series season, I'm going to say it's a tie for first. I'm not going to give somebody the edge. I'm going with a tie for first, and it's going to be Kyle Busch Motorsports teammates John Hunter Nemechek and Kyle Busch with the most wins in the Truck Series this season.
Okay.
With 4 wins apiece. So Kyle gets 5 starts. I'm saying he's going to win 4 of those starts.
Okay.
John Hunter Nemechek matches him in that Ford truck on his return to the Truck Series. I thought I was playing a little bit fun there. I thought it was a pretty interesting kind of guess.
That's really good.
But we're making all entries here. Kyle's going to be down there for 5 races guaranteed. I think he can win 4 of them. We'll see if that happens or not. But I don't see more than 4 a driver winning more than 4 races this season. I think it's just too tough of an ask with the caliber of drivers and the level of competition that we have. Last year's champion won 5, so it's not too far off of that. And I think the competition level is greater this season than we probably have ever seen it before in the Truck Series. So I think 4 is a reasonable number. So I'm going to say that 8 wins of the Camping World Truck Series this season. Let's not forget that new great title sponsor name, better than whatever it was before. We're not even going to say it because it's too long.
And RV and Outdoors.
Oh, don't do it. It's in the past.
Last shout out. All
right. The NASCAR Gander RV and Outdoors Truck Series is no more. It's no more. It's gone. It's see you later. Never come back. Camping World Truck Series returns as the sponsor name. So that's a big thumbs up from there. But I've got KBM taking the most wins of this season with 2 guys tying at 4.
See, that's funny because when you mentioned the win total, the first number that popped into my head was 4. So I'm going to stick with it as well.
Okay.
But I do not have a tie. I have 1 driver getting to 4 wins. Everybody else 3 or less.
Okay.
And my driver with 4 wins this season is Mr. Sheldon Creed. I think GMS is just – they're too good, man. They're too good. And so even though I like John Hunter Nemechek as the most talented driver, I think, in this field, there's just too many question marks surrounding KBM and their performance level these last couple of seasons to bet on them. For me to go out and get that huge win total, I think they might be something where they kind of crescendo up to the end of the season and then they're kind of that past form by the end of the season. I don't know what to expect from them at the beginning of the season, so I'm going to say GMS kind of runs the show a little bit in terms of the wins this year. I've got Creed with 4 as my winningest driver in the Truck Series.
That's a good one. You can't go wrong with the defending champion, and it seemed like he was on the upward trajectory with that. That's a good guess there for yourself with Sheldon Creed. But moving to the next one.
I like the tie pick though. That's a very, very shrewd move on your part.
I think that there's a likely chance of a tie in this series. I don't know unless it comes down to that championship and then it's like a tie between 2 guys in that championship 4, then the winner of that kind of thing.
Right.
Then they get that extra win. But I'm going to go with the tie for this one this season. Okay. I don't even know if Kyle can win 4 races in this series this season because it is so damn competitive, but I'll go with it. Anyways, your surprise driver of the season, Kyle, I'll let you kick this one off.
Yeah. I'm going to go with Tyler Ankrum. I think that in his second full season here with GMS, first year was a little bit disappointing when you look at the fact that the other 3 full-time trucks were in the Final 4, and he wasn't really in that conversation much for wins or getting that deep in the playoffs. I think his rookie season, where he kind of had to start late in the season kind of, and then picked up the win and got in and got the playoff waiver, and that weird situation there was more impressive than last season, but he's got the year under his belt. It's much more of a young team. So it's going to be very much a situation where everybody's kind of on the same level here. We're all at the same point of our careers. And I think it's something where he might be able to maybe pull out a win or two this season. I think his overall performance is going to be better. I think his stake in the team has moved up now. He's not the number 4 driver anymore. He's bumped up to that number 3 status as well. There were some crew chief changes as well, so that might bode well for him this season. When I look at GMS, they're going to be great. It's just who's going to show up for them. Obviously, Creed and Zane Smith, we know they're there. They've got 3 other guys running full-time this season that have yet to kind of break through. And so Tyler Ankrum, he's the one guy in that team that's been there last season, other than the first 2 that I mentioned there. So I'm going to take him as my surprise driver for this upcoming Truck Series season.
That's a good pick. That's a very good pick. For my surprise driver of the season, I'm going with Derek Kraus. I think that this guy could be very much under the radar this season. I think he had some very good bright spots as the season went on. Probably should have made the playoffs if it didn't come down to that kind of Richmond race there at the end of the year. Just struggled there, had the wrong setup underneath him, and he just struggled that entire race that just prevented him from getting many points that could challenge him for that final playoff spot in points. But I think when I look at his numbers last season, 13 top 10s and what he's around, that's a pretty solid mark for a rookie. I think that entire team, the 19 car itself, I believe he has a new crew chief this season as well, so that's going to bode well for him. I think a little bit of a shift at the top of the pit box is going to do him well. And Derek Kraus, I was really blown away with him when it was then the K&N series. I thought he was going to be a really great prospect, and I think he still is. I think that this season he kind of really realizes that potential, and I see him as a playoff driver this season. I think he's going to be a really great kind of under the radar. I think he could win a race as well this season if things go right on his day. So Derek Kraus is my surprise driver of the season. So I think those are pretty kind of
I like that Derek
matched.
Kraus pick quite a bit, I gotta say.
Thank you very much. But my predictions are usually wrong, so I'll probably we'll see on how that one goes. Biggest disappointment. This is a tough one because there are some guys that have this potential to disappoint this season, depending on what side you want to look at things. And I'll lead this one off here since you went first for the last one. I'm going with a bit of a shocker here in terms of biggest disappointment. It's Grant Enfinger for me this season. I think he could be a really big disappointment this season just based off of the fact we actually don't know the ThorSport lineup as of yet when we're recording this. And if they're making any changes, you'd think they would have announced it by now when the schedule and the season is about a week.
We're a week
away. And if let's just say for all sakes that it's going to stay the same. We're going to have Ben Rhodes, Matt Crafton, Johnny Sauter, and Grant Enfinger over there as your four full-time entries there. I say Grant Enfinger has the potential of being the biggest disappointment this season. This guy is basically the epitome of consistency. Sometimes he can shock you with the win, but then be terrible for a couple of weeks stretch at a time and then goes back to victory lane when nobody sees it coming. It's just so difficult for me to say that Grant Enfinger, when they're switching over to most likely the Toyota body as well, it's going to take a little bit of time for them to really switch over to that as well. I think there's potential that ThorSport could struggle a little bit this season. And I think Grant Enfinger, out of all those candidates that we expect maybe the most out of over there at that camp, made the championship for this past season. I think he has the potential to maybe even miss the playoffs this season if they have some really good young guys. If KBM capitalizes and gets back to their winning form, which they haven't had, that's allowed teams like ThorSport and GMS to do well. But I don't really see them being on a down year this year with the lineup they have, the changes they made over the offseason. So I think that could be at the detriment of someone like Grant Enfinger. So I have him as my biggest disappointment.
That's a good pick, especially given we have no clue what their driver lineup is. So,
he might not even be racing this season. He's my biggest disappointment.
I feel pretty confident he'll still be in one of those trucks, though. But no, the Toyota pick there with ThorSport's a good pick as well, just because of how late in the game that happened. I do not have a ThorSport driver, though. My biggest disappointment is going to be Todd Gilliland here. This was one that I had some trouble trying to pick out here. But when I'm looking at the potential playoff situation here, I think that truck had more speed than they kind of showed last season in some of the results. And Todd Gilliland's been in the series for a couple of years now. He's been at a top team in KBM. He's been in a new team now with Front Row. And I'm just seeing kind of the same mistakes from him time and time again. When he's in kind of those positions to either win a race or he's at the front, there seems to always be something goes wrong, whether it's his fault or somebody else's. They just don't have that closing ability that I've really seen yet. And so when I'm looking at the playoff field and how many competitive trucks there are, like I said, I had 19 on my short list of potential playoff trucks. You had 18. Exactly. Short list. It's half the field. And so when I look at it here, I just look and I see 10 drivers that I feel have a better shot at making the playoffs than Todd Gilliland. And if Todd Gilliland isn't making the playoffs this season, in what is this, his third full-time season?
Yeah, this would be his third full-time, I believe.
In trucks. With a team like Front Row that has shown speed and has had some underlying numbers of being very, very competitive, and he doesn't come through and make the playoffs, I think that could be a big, big blow here to him and kind of that team going forward. So I think Todd Gilliland, similar to you, somebody who maybe less so than Enfinger because he was in the championship 4 last year, but when I'm looking at the competition in this field, I think it's somebody that can maybe take a hit because of it. So I'm going to go with Todd Gilliland as my biggest disappointment this season.
That's an interesting one. I would have never really thought that you would have picked Todd Gilliland as your biggest disappointment.
Going into it, I didn't think I was going to either. But then I started making my playoff grade, and I was like, well, I got to drop somebody here. And I like Tyler Ankrum this year. I think he's going to make a jump. We'll get to some of the other guys. And so Todd Gilliland ended up being one of the people that fell out for me.
Yeah, I think when you look at it, he may not have the race-winning ability that some of these other guys has, and I think that's probably why I would look at that in a similar capacity. I will say, though, to that kind of maybe a little bit of devil's advocate to an extent here.
No, they
are going to be with the Ford camp, and there's not going to be many Fords, so they could get quite a bit of resources from the Ford camp over there, and that could maybe propel them into a decent spot with ThorSport. Leaving that manufacturer, there's only a couple of them left.
That plays into the disappointment factor, because if they're not at least improved from last season,
it can go either way.
Exactly. So there's expectations this season on the entire Ford camp because they don't got ThorSport anymore. And so I'm just not seeing it so much. So
fair enough.
We'll see, though. I am still a fan of Gilliland. I hope that team comes through because last year they had some speed and didn't really come through on it. I'm hoping I'm wrong in this case, but when I had to find a casualty, it ended up being Gilliland for me.
Fair enough. You've got the first one here with the bounce back driver of the season. So who performed poorly in 2020 that you think that could have a resurgence in 2021?
Well, this was a team last year that had a great 2019, came into 2020 with some high expectations and faltered for much of the season, but had a good end to the year. And that gives me some promise coming into this season. My bounce back is the Canadian, Stuart Friesen. When I'm looking at the schedule,
you look the other one.
When I'm looking at the schedule here, there's 2 dirt races. And that's pretty tasty for me when I'm looking at Stuart Friesen here because, of course, he's won a race. In fact, it was his first Truck Series race on the dirt at Eldora. He's a dirt guy. He missed a race last year to go in it and race on the dirt as well. And when I look at that team, they struggled mightily switching over to Toyota for about half the season. They were not good whatsoever, and they missed the playoffs by a pretty wide margin because of it. But in some of those playoff races, they had some legitimate speed, and they showed pretty well in the playoffs, which leads me to believe that they'll carry that over into the season. And so when I'm looking at that, consistent success over the course of the regular season, plus 2 shots at his best skill set at dirt tracks to go out and win races, I think that this could be a very, very nice bounce-back season for Stuart Friesen. So he's my pick as bounce-back driver of the year in the Truck Series.
Terrific pick there.
Thank you.
I'm going with the other Canadian. Raphael Lessard is my
bounce back
whatsoever
on the show, right?
No way. No way, no how. But I think there is really big expectations, at least for myself this season, for Raphael Lessard. I think the second half of last season is going to be a massive boost in confidence for him this season. GMS He may not get as big of a role in terms of his support in the organization. There's, he's competing against quite a few other full-time trucks over there, so he may not get preferential treatment being the new guy coming in on the block. But I think that there is real potential here. He's shown race-winning ability, won at Talladega last season, and I think the momentum that he's going to carry from the results he had last season, he's more familiar. He's had that practice to an extent. Being in a full race is as best a practice as you can really get. He's going to translate that into success this season, I think. And with the results that GMS showed last year, Rafael Lessard has the potential to be something really, really good this season, and I think he's going to capitalize that in the number 24. So an all-Canadian bounce-back driver lineup
Canadian
here for both
in
of
the
us.
24? Like, this is too perfect for me. You already know I'm getting some of that Lessard merch at some point this year. So
I may have to snag some too. Hopefully I can do another race-winning
I don't have to worry about any of that KBM stuff anymore, so I'm set.
Okay, all right. Just throwing that little bit of a knife in the back.
Yep.
No, but I think those are really good. I think those two are so due for a bounce back here. Rafael Lessard underperformed a little bit at KBM, but that entire organization did. Stuart Friesen, I don't know what the heck happened over there at that team last season, but something was amiss. I think they can definitely return to their former glory there this upcoming season.
That was a championship 4 team back in 2019 for crying out loud.
Exactly. So. They are very, very good. So what are we thinking here for the Rookie of the Year, Kyle? We've got the next one here. I'll take this one first. We got some pretty interesting names.
Yeah, I've got the list here. Do you as well?
Let me pull it up here. I have it right here. What do we got here? Okay, so there's 4 candidates, right? That's what you've got?
I've got 5 here.
Okay, what do you have for your 5?
I have Chase Purdy for GMS, of course. Yeah. Carson Hocevar for Nice Motorsports. Oh my God, I can't believe I forgot that for a second. Chris Wright for Young's Motorsports. Yeah. Haley Deegan for David Gilliland Racing now, not DJR Crossley anymore, and Chandler Smith for KBM.
Oh, is he considered a rookie?
Yes, he is.
Okay,
first full-time season. Ruh-roh. Okay, I'll go first on this one.
Yeah, you go. He didn't show up on this list. He did not show up on this list.
I'm taking Chandler Smith as my Rookie of the Year.
Oh, shoot.
What I will say, though,
Of course it's him.
GMS is a very good team. And if KBM does continue to struggle like they have in the past, then maybe Chase Purdy could go up there and outpoint Chandler Smith, but it's got to be Chandler Smith. Like, he's too good, and it's too big of a team. So for me, it's got to be Chandler Smith.
Yeah. Okay. I had Chase Purdy before that, knowing that.
I'm very glad that I pointed out that list then.
Thank God you had, because on this website that I have here, it had 4 and it didn't have Chandler Smith. So, but yes, I will be taking Chandler Smith as my Rookie of the Year, no matter what here. I would be shocked if Chase Purdy can out-duel him throughout the course of a season. I know GMS is strong, but I honestly think Chandler Smith's driving talent is going to be enough, even if KBM.
We saw Chandler Smith outperform the KBM regulars last year at points. So
in the 51, but that is their all-star truck that they are really good at.
But
at the same time,
when you're looking at a young guy,
he impressed also in the Snowball Derby.
He's a damn good prospect, man. He's been
good.
neck and neck with Sam Mayer for much of his career. I think last year Sam Mayer took that extra step to be that quote-unquote top prospect in NASCAR coming down the pipeline, but he can absolutely change that this season if he has a mega season for KBM, which he absolutely has the potential to do.
I mean, he kicked out Christian Eckes for his seat here, really. So, I mean, that's saying
something.
A lot
of faith.
Christian Eckes was somebody that I thought was going to be a potential replacement at JGR one day if he stayed in the Toyota pipeline. And unfortunately for him, it is not where it needs to be for him right now. But Chandler Smith's getting this huge opportunity here in the number 18 car that hasn't actually won a championship, really. So we'll see if maybe that debunks the trend here with the number 18. The number 4, number 4 is usually the championship winner for KBM. But Chandler Smith hopes to change that in 2021 as a rookie. So he gets the sweep of the Rookie of the Year honors this season. We're into the final couple here, Kyle. Regular season champion. What are we thinking here for I've got to go first for this one because you went first for the last 2, really. But my regular season champion is going to be the defending champion, Sheldon Creed. I think consistency will pay off here for him. He was very, very good this past season. Obviously winning the championship. I was so impressed by him. 9 top 5s, 13 top 10s. 587 laps, led the most amongst the series last season, had 11 stage wins to boat as well. how can you not like this guy for the regular season champion? Not saying he's going to be my champion, or maybe he is, but Sheldon Creed is going to be one to watch no matter what this season. Going to be carrying the GMS banner to an extent. I think Zane Smith is definitely going to be in
he
rival
takes
to
over that team leader role from Brett Moffitt, I would say.
Yeah, and the other guys can really look up to him to an extent. Not to say that he's much older than them, but he's the more senior of the five of them over there.
23 or whatever he is. He's the senior driver at that team.
Yeah, that's pretty scary. But Sheldon Creed, I think, is going to be definitely in that championship mix throughout the season. Maybe he doesn't have the wins to show for it, but I think the consistency will be there for him to get that regular season championship trophy. So what are you thinking here for your 2021 Truck Series regular season champ?
Well, I like your pick, so I'm going to go with him as well. Sheldon Creed is my guy in the regular season. Like I said earlier, I think KBM is going to be that main team to contend by the end of the season, but that's by the end of the season. I think that they might have similar results to what we've seen the last couple of years at the beginning of the year, and then really pick it up as the season goes along. So when I'm looking at this, I think we might see some early season GMS dominance, and then as the season goes along, we see more teams get in the mix for the wins there. So I've got Sheldon Creed also as my regular season champ. I've got him with the most wins in the year, so it only makes sense to go with him as my regular season champ as well.
Yeah, I went with John Nemechek with my most wins, but I'm not going to say that he gets the title for regular season.
Okay.
We're into playoff time, Kyle. We're into Gateway, the playoff opener there come late August. It's pretty early on in the playoffs there, but we've got quite a few races spread over the course of about 4 months there. It's pretty crazy, that schedule for the Truck Series this season. But, man, we'll go back and forth here, I think, in terms of drivers.
Yeah, let's go one by one, and we'll check off some of the big ones until we get later in the game.
Okay, so we'll go with our 2 picks for the most wins and regular season champion, John Nemechek and Sheldon Creed. I'm assuming you have them both.
I do have them both, yes. I do have my regular season champ making the playoffs, yes.
Yeah, well, just making sure. Okay, I honestly think he could just go up for debate from here, because there is so many good guys that can honestly make the okay, first off, do you think that there's going to be a point your way in situation for the Truck Series this season for the playoffs? Do you think, or are we going to get 10 different winners?
There's no way we get 10 different winners that short, right?
There is the potential to do it, though. That's the thing.
How many? Okay, I'm pulling this up real quick. How many winners?
So there's 7. So it's 7 races
from full-time playoff eligible drivers last season.
We have 15 races to get to the playoffs. Do we think we get 10 different winners?
I think there was 7.
Probably not.
There was 7 winners plus Lassard in the playoffs. So you're adding 3 more winners in a short time there. And I don't even know if all 7 of those guys won prior to the playoffs starting yet. Right. I think so, but I could be wrong there. So that's asking. Plus, you've got Kyle Busch races in there as well. Anybody else comes down? Maybe Elliott comes back down for a race or 2.
Oh, this stupid
Larson
brownie
was supposed to last year before his shenanigans and everything. So there's always that potential there. So I'm going to say, I'll say we get 3 point your way in, guys.
Okay. So that's.
I'll stick with the 7 total different winners in the
regular. For the entire season. I'm going to say that there's 10 different winners, but 9 full-time, Kyle Busch being the other kind of, if Larson or Elliott come down, then maybe I'll increase that number or something like that. We don't know, but I'll say 10 different winners in the Truck Series the whole season. But for the playoffs itself, I'll go with your number as well. I'll go with 7 having new winners.
That seems like a decent number.
I think there could be some surprises in the playoffs. Some guys that maybe missed out. They could probably get their win, or some guys that just made the playoffs, but they don't. I feel
pretty good that there's going to be 1 or 2 non-playoff guys winning in the playoffs.
Yeah, it always seems to happen in the Truck Series. But getting back to the actual playoff drivers themselves, we've got Sheldon Creed and John Nemechek. But who are you thinking for your next 2? We'll just go in bunches here.
Yeah, I'll toss out a couple here, and then after that we can do one by one. So I feel pretty good about Zane Smith once again. I would be shocked if he's not making the playoffs here. I would be shocked if he's not winning a couple races, to be quite frank. And then the other one I'll toss out here right away is I'll toss the Hattori machine out there. I'll toss Austin Hill out right now.
Yep, both of them got a check mark from me here with Austin
Not much
Hill
to dive in
and
there.
Zane
They
Smith.
were fantastic last year. There's no reason to believe they won't be again this year.
100%. They're going to be very, very good here. Honestly, now I think we go one by one.
One by one now, because I'm looking at this now, and I still might make changes. I don't know.
I made changes during the episode. I'm going to be completely honest. I had about 13 guys, and I've trimmed it down to 10 now.
Okay.
For now. Yeah. Okay. So I'll go next here with my fifth guy for the playoffs. I'm going to go with Chandler Smith for this one. I think he makes the playoffs in his rookie season. He may be a guy that doesn't win going up to this, but I think the consistency will be there for him to make the playoffs there. So I've got him as my fifth guy.
I think he's going to snag a win or two here. I really like him going into this year. He's got a decent amount of starts under his belt as well with that team. There's familiarity there. So I like Chandler Smith going into this year. I think he's going to be by far the best rookie. In fact, I don't know if this is spoiling anything. It might be, but he's the only rookie I have making the playoffs here is what I'll say. And so, big Chandler Smith fan over here, even though he is at KBM. I think he's going to have a great season this year.
Yeah, for sure. What do you got for your next guy here? This is number 6.
Okay, well, I'm not spoiling anything by saying this one because I mentioned him earlier as my surprise driver of the year, Tyler Ankrum for GMS here. I think he's going to have a really, really strong season. Second year with GMS after a good first year. Not great last season, making the jump up to the big team there with GMS. I think he's going to bounce back pretty strong and have a big season there with GMS. So he is my, sixth driver in the playoffs here.
I don't have Tyler Ankrum
there. There it is. I thought so.
Yeah. I honestly think that there is a couple of other guys over there that are going to be better than him at least. And I feel pretty confident in that. I don't think Tyler Ankrum – I don't think Tyler Ankrum is spectacular. I think he's good, but I don't know if he's playoff worthy in this playoff competitive nature that we've got right now. If it was 12, he'd be in, but I think he misses. He's going to be that guy. He's going to be a bubble guy for me.
This is so tough.
He could just miss it. I think he could just miss it. Yeah. So to piggyback off of yours here, you went with Tyler Ankrum. I'm going to go with Derek Kraus. I think he makes the playoffs this season. I have him as my surprise driver of the year, and I think that comes along with that. He makes the playoffs as the only David Gilliland entry that's going to be making the playoffs as well for me. So I don't think Haley Deegan will get in. I'm sorry, everybody, but I think Derek Kraus is definitely one to keep your eye on this season. So he's my my sixth guy for my playoffs.
Well, that's a fun one to put out there because I don't have Derek Kraus making the playoffs. I really like Derek Kraus. I wanted to find a way to get him in here. I just couldn't do it. So there's one that we trade there, Ankrum and Kraus each way. Okay. I'll go next here. And you know what? I'm gonna toss out your disappointment driver of the year, Grant Enfinger. I have him making the playoffs here. It's Thor Sport. They used to be Toyota. They're going back. I mean, it's still not technically confirmed anything there, so who the hell knows what's going on. But I just can't bet against that team. No matter what, they always show up. They're always consistent, and they always find a way to get somebody in the Final Four. So for me, I got to toss Grant Enfinger there in my playoff lineup here.
Yeah, I don't have him making the playoffs because I do have him as my biggest disappointment.
Wow. Final Four out. Like Stuart Friesen was when they made the switch too.
Pattern, maybe trend alert. I don't know. I think it's a big swing here. This is like a Denny Hamlin thing, and he'll win Daytona probably next week. You know what I mean? Like I'll just be screwed over here.
Year, so.
I know. I absolutely know. Like I am swinging for the fences here with my predictions. But what's it all for if you can't be a little bit ballsy here and there?
Exactly.
That's my one. So I'll stay over there in Thorsport for my next one. I'm going to say Matt Crafton makes the playoffs. Yep. Just super consistent. He can sneak out a win here or there. I think he's coming to the end of his career now. I think that they're going to be ushering in a youth movement over there at Thorsport over the next couple of seasons at some point in time.
You got to imagine sometime soon, right?
Exactly. And I think that this Matt Crafton guy, I mean, he's a 3-time champion in this sport. So I think he's got the the maturity and the experience to just get a level head, get the consistent finishes. I don't think ThorSport will be mind-blowing this season just because of the manufacturer change. That does take some time to get used to, but I do think Matt Crafton makes the playoffs.
I have him making it as well, so nothing too
Okay.
crazy on that one. I thought about making the bold move and dropping him out, but as you said, the consistency is there no matter what. He's always in the mix, and whether he gets the win or not, he's always in the conversation for a playoff spot, and usually a pretty solid one. So, yeah, Matt Crafton also in my lineup here for the playoffs. Okay.
So you went on number 8 then here? This is number 8.
Number 8, left. Which means, yeah, we getting down to things here. Okay. Oh no, this is my number 9. This is my number 9.
Your number 9?
Yes.
Okay. Then I'll go. Then I should go here then.
Yes.
Because I think I've only have 8 so far.
Is that right?
No, 7. I only have 7 so far. Yeah, I only have 7.
Yeah. So I've got 8 named.
Okay,
so far.
I'll go here again.
Okay.
I'm going with my my bounce back driver of the year. I think Rafael Lessard makes the playoffs this season.
I love it. I love it.
I am biased to the largest extent with this one, but I honestly think this guy is going to have a great season. And Rafael Lessard is one to keep your eye on, man. He could have been the one that I could be the surprise driver of the year, but I just went with bounce back because of his poorer 2020 season compared to Derek Kraus. But I do think Rafael Lessard over there with GMS, I think he's going to find the consistency he needs. He showed that in the second half of last season. Enough said. Rafael Lessard makes the playoffs.
I absolutely love that pick.
You're not going to.
But I just can't do it. I just can't find a spot for him. It's to a new team. There's still not much in terms of practice or qualifying for most of those races. I really wanted to find a way to get him in here, but I think he's just going to be on the outside looking, and I think he's probably going to be like an 11 or 12 guy here in a very tight playoff.
I think he may be on the outside in points, but I think he can go out there and win one thing that he makes it in. I think that's what really makes him more of a playoff guy for me, but carry on.
Well, I'm glad you say that because a guy that I think is going to get a win but not have enough. So a guy that's not going to have enough points to be inside the top 10 but is going to get a win to get his way into the playoffs also happens to be a Canadian. Stuart Friesen wins one of the 2 dirt races and makes his way into the playoffs here. I think I went with him as my bounce back, I believe it was. Yes, bounce back pick here. I think they're going to be better over the course of the season, but the big thing are those 2 dirt opportunities, and it's not just the one kind of home run swing anymore. He's got 2 picks here between Bristol Dirt and Knoxville. I like him on the dirt in the truck series, so I'm going Stuart Friesen to win one of those dirt races and get his way into the playoffs.
Okay, so that's 9. So you got 1 left.
I got 1 left.
I'm following suit here. I have Stuart Friesen making the playoffs.
Oh, you got them both in. Okay.
Yeah, I think Canada's going to be getting at least 1/5 of the playoff grid this season in the truck series. I think it is. I think it's totally possible, man. Like,
it's totally possible.
Stuart Friesen is.
I couldn't do both.
He's so due for a bounce back. That team is so good, and I think Toyota as a whole is looking for a bounce back this season in the truck series, Xfinity series, and the Cup series as a whole. Like, I think they're going to be investing quite a bit going into this season. This is the last year with the Cup Series car. We'll see what they do with these series moving forward, but they needed that one off season here to adjust to that body. That's why I think ThorSport could have something a little bit similar there. So I'm going with Stuart Friesen as my 9th playoff guy. So it all comes down to this. Our last guy to make the playoffs, number 10.
Do you think we have the same guy?
No.
You don't?
I don't think so.
Okay, so then you've got I think you must have a strange pick then.
I don't know. I don't know what you think is strange compared to last season.
Okay, do you want me to go first or you want to go first?
I want you to go first.
Okay. I went boring with my last pick. I've got Ben Rhodes here. He was consistent last year. The shenanigans at the end of the year aside, he's a very strong race car driver. I'm banking on ThorSport not struggling in that switch over to Toyota, which very well could be a situation and completely screws with all my predictions here, but they're just too consistent. And no matter how many times I try to bet against that organization, they always can find a way to show up again. And so I've got 3 ThorSport drivers here in my playoff grid. Ben Rhodes rounds it out as the 3.
Turns out we do think alike, Kyle, because I have Ben Rhodes as my last guy as well. Yeah. I wasn't sure if you were going to put him in or not after the last season, but I'm going with Ben Rhodes as my 10th and final guy as well. What Kyle said, it basically sums it up. He just has that little bit of it factor sometimes. He's caught a lot of burned bridges with some guys over this past season, so we'll see if that comes back to bite him in the ass this year. But Ben Rhodes is definitely an interesting guy to keep your eye on. There's potential there to be great this season, and I think there's potential for him to really struggle this season. I don't know if there's really an in-between for Ben Rhodes, but I do think he's still going to make the playoffs at the end of the day. So I only have 2 ThorSport guys making the playoffs. Johnny Sauter does not make the playoffs for either of us. I was unsure with you.
I don't even know if he's going to be on the grid. So
yeah, to be honest, but I was a little bit unsure if you were going to put Brett Moffitt in there or not, and I was close to putting it. I was close to putting him in. It's just because of how Nice performed last season that takes me out of it. But with his talent alone, he could potentially just go up there and win a race or something.
Was still very good with them last season, and I think Brett Moffitt might be a comparable driver going forward. So I think they're going to be. I think he's going to be one to watch. They're going to be closer. So some notable names that basically the short list that I had, some names that I don't have making the playoffs here. Chase Purdy, Rafael Lessard for myself, Ryan Truex, Brett Moffitt. I guess you tossed Carson Hocevar in there too because he's with Nice Motorsports. Deegan and Tanner Gray as well. I don't think that team's there yet, and I don't think either of them are there yet in their development. Looking down here, I've got Derek Krause. That one was really tough for me. I really wanted to get him in there, but I wanted to go with the bold pick of Friesen making it, so I had to drop Derek Krause, but that one really hurt. Johnny Sauter as well there from kind of the short list that I had. And I think that's, Todd Gilliland as well. I had missing.
So that means that we have 8 of the 10 the same, if I'm not mistaken.
I have Grant Enfinger and Tyler Ankrum. You have Rafael Lessard and Derek Krause.
All right. So, I like it.
It's a nice little head-to-head there. We'll have to watch.
I do like it. This is, this Truck Series season can go so many ways.
So good.
If Johnny Sauter is in the series this season, I do think he can go out there and potentially win a race. There is so many different things. I have Grant Enfinger missing the playoffs here. That is a huge risk on my part.
Yeah,
it
is.
Whatever, man. I don't care if I get this wrong. Screw it.
Okay, let's jump to our final 4 picks here.
All right, we'll go one by one here once again. I'm going with my regular season champion to make it. I'm sure you are as well. Sheldon Creed, I think, is going to be making the championship 4 with a chance to defend his title.
Yeah, I think that's probably the easiest pick of these because he won the championship last year. He was consistent all year last year. Brett Moffitt's gone, so he's the big dog. He's the leader at that team now, and I would be very surprised if he's not battling for a championship come Phoenix next year.
100%.
I guess this year technically.
My next one
doesn't feel like next year is this year yet. But
fair enough. So, like I said at the beginning, I have Jonathan Nemechek getting a tie with the most wins. And I think that they pick it up in the playoffs. And I think that's what's going to provoke him into the playoffs and into that championship 4. This risk, bet on himself move, I think it's going to pay off and he's going to make it to the championship 4. Whether he wins the championship or not, we'll see. Just stay tuned for that in a couple of seconds' time. But I've got John Hunter Nemechek making the playoffs.
I do too.
Championship 4.
Championship 4, yes. And like I said, I think that KBM is going to be a team that might start out a little bit slow, but as the regular season comes to an end, as we get into the playoffs, I think they're really going to find their gear. And John Hunter Nemechek is absolutely going to lead the way there, in my opinion.
What have you got for your third guy then, Kyle?
Okay, I'll go with the one that I feel more confident about, and that's Zane Smith. I think GMS is going to send at least a couple of trucks to the championship 4 once again, and I think Creed and Zane Smith are going to lead the way this season for them. Both were in the championship 4 last year. Zane Smith really opened my eyes a little bit last year. I'd seen him at Junior Motorsports, and he was solid. But I didn't really know what to expect from him last season at GMS, and he blew my expectations away. Getting a win there and making it all the way to the championship 4 was very impressive. I think he's going to keep that momentum up and have another great season. I think he's going to make his way to the championship 4.
I have him as well. I think it was just kind of a no-brainer for me then. Those were the 3 obvious ones for me.
Me too.
To make it, just based off of what we're expecting. John Hunter Nemechek's talent and GMS as a whole as an organization, I think those two are going to be really steering the ship over there. And if not for, I think, Brett Moffitt last season, I think Zane Smith has even more success. Brett Moffitt didn't win the most races or anything last season, but I think that they were in contention where they battled enough. Kansas comes to mind, of course, when that all happened. Zane Smith had a shot there, but then we all know how that unfolded. But I think those three guys are definitely your favorites to make the championship for. Anything can happen in these playoffs with the rounds that they have. Road course Gateway is a crapshoot all the time in the Truck Series, and Bristol to open the playoffs. The top guy could get knocked out of that just based off of circumstances. But yeah, I think those three are going to be your three mains. Comes down to this last one. Who have you got as your final guy to make the championship for?
Well, up until 20 seconds ago, I had Austin Hill's name written down here, but I'm not going with Austin Hill anymore. Scratched it out. No more. My last one for the championship 4, I'm going to say it's 2 GMS versus 2 KBM. I've got Chandler Smith.
Oh, he's going with
the
it.
Championship 4 in his rookie season. Man, I think this kid's legit. I think KBM is going to have that big crescendo late into the season. And because of that, John Hunter Nemechek and Chandler Smith are both going to be in my championship 4. So GMS versus KBM for the Truck Series title for myself.
It's interesting that you had Austin Hill's name written down because I have Austin Hill's name written down as my 4th guy. It's very interesting that we had it 20 seconds before you said it. But I'm going with Austin Hill as my last guy. I think it's a little bit too high of expectation to expect Chandler Smith to go in there and make the championship 4 in his first season. But I think it's totally possible. But I think Austin Hill, after last season's disappointment of not making the championship 4, he's out for some redemption this season. And that 16 truck is always strong come playoff time. They just got taken out these last playoffs and was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and it just came down to unfortunate circumstances there for him come the end of the season. But I think Austin Hill is due for a bounce back a little bit in some respects. If you want to look at that, last season's regular season champ as well, if I'm not mistaken. So I think he's going to be very, very strong. And that's my championship 4. John Hunter Nemechek, Zane Smith, Sheldon Creed, and Austin Hill. The 4 guys I thought were kind of the no-brainers. I think continue that momentum to some extent to as the playoffs roll along. I like Austin Hill across all the tracks, really. I think if he's going to miss the that championship 4, it will come down to that Talladega race or that Martinsville race or something. But I think there's the large potential that he could win that Las Vegas race in that round of 8, and I think that could be just a win and you're in, and he doesn't have to worry for the next 2 weeks. But that's it. That's the championship 4. But we have one last thing to get to, Kyle. We've got one difference in our championship 4. The champion. Oh man, this is tough. This is extremely tough. I'm so interested to see what you've got. But since you went first with this last one, I'll go first with this one. Okay. Just got to be fair with it. The champion of the 2021 NASCAR Camping World Truck Series season is, drum roll please, John Hunter Nemechek is going to win the championship this season. I'm going with it. I think this bet on yourself move is going to be one of the biggest talked about storylines when the season is done.
Better be.
It's a massive risk. He could totally mess this up and miss the championship 4 and even miss that round of 8. There's totally potential in that happening just based off of the playoff rounds. But his experience in the Cup Series, he may not be as familiar with some of the Truck Series races or the tracks itself that the regulars are maybe used to. But I think KBM as a whole, they're due for a bounce back. Two poor seasons. I think that's because they had less talented drivers as well at that stable to some respect compared to what they had previously. When you look at William Byron, Christopher Bell, Eric Jones, they were all there before that kind of down period here for the past couple of seasons. And I think this lineup here has the potential to juice this entire team up and get back to the performance that we're accustomed to. So John Hunter Nemechek, the number 4 truck, is going to win the Truck Series championship. That's my pick.
I love it. I'm a big fan.
You're not going with it, though. You're not going with it. I don't know, man.
I don't know. I'm looking at 2 names here. I'm not going to lie. I'm looking at your boy, John Hunter Nemechek, but I'm looking at Zane Smith potentially here.
I thought you were, yeah.
But last week on our silly season, I said John Hunter Nemechek would go out, impress enough to go and land that second 2311 ride. Obviously, it's not being filled by Denny Hamlin anymore.
Thanks for that.
one last little one in there.
Yeah, appreciate it.
I'm going to say John Hunter Nemechek finishes the year.
Does it?
Finishing first at Phoenix and wins the Truck Series championship. Look, man, the bet on yourself move, man. Fred VanVleet just dropped 54, most ever by an undrafted player in NBA history. Bet on yourself brand. John Hunter Nemechek here. Bet on yourself. I like the move. I think he's going to be very, very impressive this season. I think that entire KBM team is going to find some of its old form here, having a Cup Series driver and John Hunter Nemechek coming back down to drive for them, a top prospect in his own right. Chandler Smith, a top prospect as well in that team. I think it's the best lineup they've had in quite some time. And when I'm looking at Phoenix as well as that final race, he's a good Phoenix driver. When you look at his career in the Xfinity Series in 2018 with the 42 with Chip Ganassi, he ran that second last race of the season at Phoenix, won the pole, ended up finishing ninth, a bit of a disappointing finish there. 2019 with GMS, though, top 5 finish at Phoenix. You look at his Truck Series results, finished second at Phoenix in 2015, finished second at Phoenix in 2017, as well as a couple other top 10s there in his career with the family-owned Nemco Motorsports. I like KBM. I like Phoenix as a track for him. I'm taking the swing as well. I'm going to say John Hunter Nemechek wins the 2021 Truck Series Championship.
KBM is so strong there. We saw it this past year, finishing 3, 4, 5 in the season finale. That's right.
3, 4, 5.
And they are so good at Phoenix. And I think given the practice time that they will have for championship weekend on top of that, I think that's just going to make that team deadly if they make the championship 4. And as well, I think Zane Smith is one to keep your eye on. He was better than Sheldon Creed on that last run. Let's not forget how that championship was won for Sheldon Creed. Yep. Brett Moffitt had the championship in hand. Zane Smith in second, Enfinger in second, then it was, and then Smith, and then it was all over the place, right? So
because Enfinger had the pit strategy,
the fresh tires at the end, yeah. So I mean, Creed was nowhere really for that championship at the end, but then he came out and prevailed. But I think Zane Smith had a little bit more in that race overall compared to Creed that lends me to believe that he could be in that mix fighting John Hunter Nemechek, but not to say that Sheldon Creed is not going to be the favorite maybe going into that, and Sheldon Creed is going to be right there. I think he's got to be
the favorite as defending champ, and given his age, how good GMS has been, the fact that Moffitt's not there anymore, so he's the leader of that team. It's going to be a fascinating year in that regard to see maybe how GMS does without Moffitt there, without having a veteran in that lineup. How Nice Motorsports does. Do they bounce back? Do they have a more competitive team?
If they do, we're
Ryan
screwed.
Truex and Brett Moffitt. Man, it's going to be a good year, man.
It's this Truck Series season. If you don't watch the trucks regularly, this is the season to tune in. This is the season to tune in. No matter how, you have to find a way to watch it. This season is going to be incredible. I can guarantee you it's going to be one of the best seasons maybe in Truck Series history with what we've got on deck this season. And
I don't hate that take. With
the unknowns that we have coming into this year with limited practice on some events, totally revamped schedule for the Truck Series here. It's really incredible what they've done. I can't wait
for that Watkins Glen race. Oh,
me too. And the road courses are going to be key this year for them. Sheldon Creed going to be looking at that Daytona road course again, licking his chops like he did this past year. There is so much potential. Oh. I know. I think there's so many different winners that we could have this season. It's going to come down to points, individual points, singular digit points when the playoffs are going to be decided. And then in the playoffs, anything can happen with the playoff schedule that we've got. So very interesting episode that we had on deck for this one. Yep. And we got 2 more in store for you guys. So make sure you stay tuned for those. Xfinity coming up in our next episode coming later this week. And then we'll be previewing the Cup Series season early next week before we get into the Clash, qualifying for the 500, the duels, and then of course we're gonna do something a little bit maybe interesting next week. We may do 3 episodes to do a little bit more of a special edition of the Green Flag because it is Speed Weeks. It's the big opener to the season, and we've got too much to talk about maybe to kind of put that into 2 episodes next week. So stay tuned for those. But any final thoughts before we wrap up today's episode, Kyle?
Whew, this was a fun one. We had a great race at the Rolex 24 this past weekend. All gearing up for Speed Weeks now, and it feels good to have a full season preview out of the way because it means that we're actually kind of here. Like, it's crazy. We're 1 week away less than
We're not even sure with Thor Sport though, man.
It's crazy, man. It's crazy. Oh, I cannot wait for this Truck Series season, though. The fact that we've got 2 Canadians that could potentially make the playoffs, win races, is insane. That's unreal for us. And the lineup as a whole, like, I'm going to be fascinated to see how Haley Deegan does in her rookie year. We didn't talk about her much because I think if you're looking at the grand scheme of things and how that team
managing expectations,
you need to manage your expectations. And I think putting extra kind of hype on her is unnecessary at this point. But I'm going to be keeping an eye on her. That I'm a sucker for that matte black Monster Energy paint scheme.
Number one.
It looks good, man. It looks good. I can't wait to see her on track, and a couple dirt races there as well for her. That's her bread and butter. She finished second in ARCA last year at their dirt race. Could you imagine? No, I'm not going to get ahead of myself here. I can't wait for this season. It's going to be so good.
So many twists and turns ahead. Yeah. I'm going to be like, this season is just shaping up to be incredible across the board.
One thing I will say though, no Alan Cavana really sucks. That's the one thing that sucks about this upcoming season for the trucks.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they handle the broadcasting side of things with this Truck Series season, who they're going to be having in the pits for that. We're going to miss you, Alan. It's not going to be the same without you on the Truck Series side of things. You did a great job, and we're wishing you all the best in finding something, hopefully in the motorsports side of things, because you do such a great job at covering the sport. But yeah, great episode today, Kyle. Very happy that we got the first of 3.
Yep.
Rolex 24 in the books. What a great race that was. Fun to we couldn't recap 24 hours of content. I'm sorry if you really wanted a lap-by-lap analysis. We're not going to be doing that as much this year.
Imagine doing a lap-by-lap for 800 laps. Oh,
I can't imagine it, honestly. I think I would probably pass out from the pain. But yeah, the Truck Series season is fully loaded, and we're very excited to see what we've got on deck for the trucks. And then stay tuned for the Xfinity Series. Like I said, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Make sure you give a like on this video. Follow us on Instagram at The Green Flag. Follow us on Twitter at The Green Flag Pod. Man, it's going to be fun. Links to the social channels will be in the description of the YouTube channel, into the YouTube video. But for this episode, I've been Lukas Wacker. He's been Kyle Cushman. Signing off for now. We will talk to you later this week to preview the 2021 Xfinity Series season.